In the boundless expanse of the Imperium of man, 1 billion souls rise and sleep beneath hive spires, pray to the Emperor on cracked chapel floors, and labor endlessly for masters they will never see. The galaxy is vast, teeming with known threats: orcs, chaos, Tyranids. Yet of all the horrors that stalk the stars, none is so insidious, so treacherously patient, as that which grows not in plain sight, but in the shadow. For long before the great devourer arrives, its heralds walk among us. The Genestealer Cults, the cancer beneath the skin, have already begun the feast. They do not announce their presence with fleet or flame. They slip through void ships unnoticed, nested deep in cargo bays or stowed aboard derelict space hulks. A single genestealer, silent and pure, is all it takes. No planetary invasion, no breach of atmosphere. It steps into a city unseen and begins its work. Its weapon is not bolter or blade, but infection. The Genestealer's kiss, they call it, a violation that rewrites the body and soul of its victim. The victim becomes enthralled, not aware, not enslaved, but converted. Loving, zealous. In the darkness of a hab's lower level, a man disappears from his routine. He returns days later, dazed, strangely serene, his eyes lit with unspoken purpose. No one asks. It is the underhive. Disappearances are common, but soon his partner begins to change. Their child is born wrong, extra limbs, pale skin, black eyes that shine in the dark. But they name it and cradle it, and they love it all the same. They love it more. It is their child, after all, and so it begins. Genestealer cults do not conquer. They infect, slowly, purposefully. Entire generations are born within the shadows, hybrids of man and Xeno, increasingly human in form with each cycle, yet bound entirely to the will of the alien patriarch that seeded them. From generation to generation, they spread their creed, their worship, their holy purpose, and none outside the cult suspects a thing. Not the ecclesiarchy, not the Adeptus Arbites, not the Imperial Guard. Because what they see are factory workers, water haulers, miners, those whom the Imperium has long ignored. Herein lies the genius. The cult does not rise in the palaces. It does not seed itself among the powerful. It festers among the forgotten, among those the Imperium has deemed expendable. It gives them hope, unity, faith, purpose. It wraps itself in the language of liberation. The Star Children, they whisper. The day of ascension will come. We shall be free. To the disillusioned, this is gospel. To the hybrid, this is instinct. And to the Genestealer, it is strategy. The cult does not preach vengeance. It preaches destiny. And so entire settlements fall under its spell without a single shot fired. A voice in the hive's lower reaches, a glyph on a wall, a magus speaking of salvation under flickering lumen lights, all laying the foundation for the day they will strike. But what makes them terrifying is not just their subtlety, it is their loyalty. They do not fear death. They welcome it. Every cultist, from the clawed acolyte to the nearly human neophyte, believes they are part of something divine, that when the sky darkens and the Star Children arrive, they will be uplifted, rewarded, perfected. They will ascend. That belief is unshakable. It is baked into their biology, etched into their bones, and by the time the Imperium sees the truth, it is always too late. Planetary governors send out astropathic signals, begging for reinforcements, saying that the local militia has turned, that PDF weapons stockpiles have vanished, that civic infrastructure has failed without explanation. Arbites' precincts are overrun from within. Vox systems fall silent, cities burn. Not from orbital bombardment, but from mass uprisings, precisely coordinated, years in the making. These cultists are not rabble. They have weapons, some stolen, others repurposed. Mining drills become siege tools, haulers become armored transports, industrial lasers become anti-tank beams. They strike with precision, often decapitating leadership within the first hour, military command, local adepta officials, even off-world dignitaries, dead before the loyalists know what's happening. But worse still is what comes after, the Tyranids. The cult does not rise for itself, it rises for the great devourer. Their psychic signal, amplified by the patriarch and its broodmind, becomes a beacon, a flare in the warp. The hive fleet comes, and it is not gentle. But by then the cult has fulfilled its purpose. It does not resist the Tyranids, it embraces them. It stands in the streets, arms open to the sky, chanting praises as the spores descend and the air turns to poison. To them, death is not the end. It is union, glory, ascension. They die believing their gods have arrived, and in a twisted way, they have. There are records, classified, buried beneath Ordo Xenos vaults and redacted administratum files. Gosar Quintus, Icar Fourth Vigilus, worlds that burned not from invasion, but from betrayal, from the enemy within. Each time the signs were missed, each time a pure strain genestealer started the cycle, each time the Imperium reacted too late. And even now, even with awareness growing, the threat cannot be fully stopped, because a genestealer cult does not wear its face in the open. It wears yours, your neighbors, your commanders. It prays beside you, it bleeds like you, and it waits. This is the horror of the Genestealer cults, not their strength, not their alien origin, but their humanity. They are not alien invaders, they are family, community, belief, all turned toward extinction. They do not destroy a world, they prepare it, they soften it, they lay it bare for the great devourer to consume. And the Imperium, mighty as it is, cannot watch every world, not all at once, not forever. So they grow still, beneath hive cities, within agri-colonies, in the holds of pilgrim fleets and forgotten mining rigs, waiting, watching, whispering their gospel. The day of ascension will come, and the Emperor shall weep, not for their betrayal, but because he will never see it coming. It is one of the peculiar truths of the Imperium that history, when it does not serve the present, is often buried. Stories that shake the foundations of imperial doctrine are not illuminated. They are suppressed. That is why the tale of Imgal, perhaps the first encounter between mankind and the genestealer species, is known only to a select few. It is not recited in the Schola Progenium. It is not read aloud by the lex mechanics of the Adeptus Administratum, but buried in the vaults of the Ordo Xenos, scrawled in ink over crumbling parchment and backed by heavily redacted vid captures, lies the record of how it all began. Not with the Tyranids, not with cults, but with a beast. A single beast with claws like swords and a mind that whispered madness. Imgal was never a prominent world, not in the early days of the Imperium, nor in the height of the Great Crusade, nor in the centuries that followed. A moon, half dead, circling the gas giant Borsis in the Ultima Segmentum. It was a place of little consequence. No strategic minerals, no astropathic relay, no pilgrimage site. Yet it became infamous in quiet corners of the Inquisition because of what it held beneath its rock-strewn surface, creatures unlike any previously catalogued. The first known encounter came not with war, but with curiosity. A Magos Biologus expedition from the Adeptus Mechanicus, operating under the banner of Explorator Fleet Helix 9, had been tasked with surveying the Borsis system. It was routine. The system had once been a staging post during the Great Crusade, but had fallen into neglect. A few ruins scattered across the larger moons, some pre-imperial scrap work, nothing of serious note. Imgarl, however, emitted low-level energy signatures that intrigued the Mechanicus, pulses in the mag-ether range, far too structured to be tectonic activity, yet not rhythmic enough to suggest artificial origin. When the Magos delegation landed, they expected to find some ancient human relay or malfunctioning archaeotech. What they found instead was silence. No fauna, no flora, not even microbial life above ground. Just stone, mist, and eerie geological formations, jagged caves, twisted rock growths, and what appeared to be natural amphitheaters carved into the rock by unknown forces. They established a forward base and began mapping the cave networks. Within 2 days, they had lost contact with 3 tech thralls and an explorator servitor. The official logs from the time claim geological instability, but the private notes of Magos Biologus, Elith Orvin, record something far more troubling. The echoes speak. There is movement in the dark that the Auspex cannot track. Flesh shredded, armor torn open not by blast, but by blade. No corpses, only blood. By the 6th day, only 2 members of the research team were alive. The rest had vanished. Fearing total loss of the mission, Orvin transmitted a coded emergency signal to the fleet above and activated a kill order protocol to sterilize the site. But it was already too late. The rescue skiff that descended from orbit never lifted off. Communications with the main vessel ceased shortly thereafter. A Mechanicus cutter, returning to Borsis after a supply run to the next system, found the orbital survey ship adrift and silent. Upon boarding, the cutter's crew discovered the hull torn open in places, corridors slick with blood and ichor, and a grotesque trail of destruction that led to the ship's core, where they encountered for the first time in recorded Imperial history the Genestealer. It was not named so then. The logs refer to it as Xenos Form YMG-03, a 6-limbed predator, serpentine in motion with disturbingly intelligent eyes. The cutter's security team killed it with heavy plasma fire, suffering 3 fatalities. They retrieved the corpse and returned it to their primary forge world for study. That was the first mistake. The second came when the corpse did not remain a corpse. What the Mechanicus had failed to detect, what no one knew, was that the Genestealer species possesses a terrifying form of biological resilience. It did not truly die. It entered a regenerative hibernation state, one that allowed it to mimic death long enough to pass all biosanctum checks and containment protocols. Within 2 weeks of arrival at the forge world of Kelbazar Secundus, the creature awoke, slew the Magos sinologists studying it, and escaped into the vast hab stacks of the lower Manufactoria. From there, the Imgarl strain of the Genestealer began its dark work. Reports of missing workers, a spike in disappearances, murmurs of deformed children. Then riots. Riots turned into uprisings, and finally full-scale sedition. By the time the Adeptus Arbits uncovered the truth, it was already too late. The cult, if it could even be called that in those early days, was no longer operating in secret. It marched openly through the metal warrens of the Forge world, bearing crude icons of a 4-limbed god and led by a hideously bloated creature with pale flesh and burning eyes, the first recorded patriarch. The ruling tech priests declared a war of extermination. They summoned Skitari cohorts, deployed Castellan robots, even brought in reductor detachments with seismic warheads. The Manufactoria burned, hundreds of thousands died. The Forge world's population was culled by 1/3, but in the end the infection was purged. Or so they believed. Unknown to them, multiple infected ships had already departed Kelbazar Secundus during the early stages of the uprising. Merchant vessels, pilgrim barges, mining haulers, all unknowingly bearing hybrid offspring, hidden in stasis coffins or among the crew. Some of these vessels would never reach their destinations, others would crash or fall to piracy, but a few, just a few, would arrive, and they would sow new seeds. The Imgarl strain, named after the site of the first encounter, would become one of the most virulent of all genestealer types. More aggressive than its kin, more cunning, possessing the ability to adapt its physiology rapidly, shifting between dormancy and hyper-aggression. The Ordo Xenos would later classify it as a distinct threat within the wider Tyranid genome, despite the original hive fleets not yet being known. This was the knife before the hand, the whispered breath before the roar. At the time, however, the true nature of the Genestealer was not understood. The Mechanicus catalogued it as a singular Xenos predator. The Inquisition at that point had no formal classification system for organisms that could create psychic bonds across generations. The ecclesiarchy refused to acknowledge the heretical notion that faith itself could be twisted by a Xenos parasite. And so the truth of Imgarl was buried. The official Mechanicus records describe it as a biological containment failure. No mention of cults, no mention of infection, certainly no mention of worship. But there were survivors. Members of the original Cutter crew who lived through the purge of Kelbazar Secundus. One of them, Lex Mechanic Halvost Cree, would later defect to the Inquisition, bearing testimony sealed under triple cipher protocol. His statement remains one of the most chilling in the Inquisition's vaults. It was not the claws that terrified me, it was their eyes. They looked at us like brothers, like we belonged to them. They didn't want to kill us. They wanted to bring us home. Imgarl then was not just the beginning of contact, it was the first invitation. A prelude, not a warning. The Genestealers had tasted Imperial blood and found it receptive. They would not need fleets. They would not need armies. Just patience, just darkness, just one of their own dropped into the cracks of civilization. And from Imgarl, they began to spread, unseen, unstoppable, unbelievably close. The shadow did not fall all at once. It crept, one world at a time. And in each the same ritual repeated itself. The kiss, the birth, the worship, the uprising. But Imgarl was the first to be kissed, and the Imperium still bears the scar. The cults that walk today may wear different colors, different names, different masks, but if you peel back their skin, their creed, their purpose, you will find the same blood, the same genesis, the same hunger. It all began on a moon no one cared to name, and it never really ended. In the crumbling underbelly of the Imperium, where the light of the Emperor grows thin and faith begins to fray, the true genius of the Genestealer cult reveals itself, not in war, not in rebellion, but in patience. There is no fanfare, no declaration of conquest, just a whisper in the dark, a child born with too many fingers, and the first stone laid in a path toward planetary damnation. It does not begin with violence. It begins with a single pure strain. Perhaps it slithers from a space hulk nestled in the ducts of a derelict freighter. Perhaps it lurks within the waste vents of a mining ship, dormant for decades until a crewman stumbles into its lair. However it arrives, its goal is never conquest by brute force. It does not seek immediate slaughter. It seeks propagation. One night, one touch. That is all it needs. The Genestealer does not infect like a disease. It remakes. With its barbed tongue, it delivers the so-called kiss to a host, often a solitary worker, a forgotten pilgrim, or a frontier trader. The infection is not visible. No wound is left. The host remains conscious, even coherent. But inside them, the change begins. Not a corruption of flesh, but of mind. A psychic bond is formed, one that links the victim, body and soul, to the will of the Genestealer. They do not feel violated. They feel chosen. It is one of the most tragic aspects of this biological heresy. The host does not resist the transformation. They welcome it, Whatever doubts might have stirred in those first hours dissolve in the days that follow. The dreams begin. Beautiful, warm dreams of family, unity, and destiny. Dreams whispered to them by the embryonic psychic link they now share with their future brood. And then, with grotesque irony, the host returns home to their partner. They smile, they embrace, they conceive. And what is born is not a child, not in the human sense. It is a hybrid. The first generation is unmistakable, bulging cranium, fanged mouth, pallid skin, and limbs that twist into unnatural angles. It should be a horror. But to the infected parent, it is perfect. Their mind has already been rewritten by psychic echo. To them, the creature is beautiful, sacred, a miracle. Thus, the first stone is laid, and from that one monstrous child, a dynasty begins. The early generations remain in hiding. The acolyte hybrids, as they are later classified, are incapable of blending into human society. They are the laborers of the cult's future, the diggers of tunnels, the builders of altars, the lifeblood of the subterranean faith. Their appearance is inhuman, their movements spidery, their strength preternatural. Yet they are docile among their kin. They know their place in the hierarchy. They obey the will of the one who sired them, the purest strain who now watches over them as a patriarch in waiting. Each hybrid generation becomes more refined. When those acolytes breed, or more often infect again, their offspring are markedly more human. Their skin takes on more natural tones, their fingers grow straighter, their faces less alien. By the third generation, the hybrids can walk in the streets of a hive city and barely draw attention. A lopsided smile here, a strange gait there. Nothing more. They take jobs. They earn trust. They join the workforce. They enter the ranks of the local militia. And always, they remain loyal. Each hybrid is bound not by law or blood, but by psychic compulsion to the one at the top of the unseen pyramid, the cult's original patriarch, and eventually to the psychic haze of the brood mind that spreads across generations like an invisible net. It is this link, this unbreakable loyalty, that turns the cult from a disjointed Xenos infection into a coherent machine of insurrection. No order is questioned, no sacrifice is too great, no loyalty to the Imperium can compete. From the outside, nothing appears wrong. The cult's greatest strength is invisibility. Its agents aren't monsters, they're miners who show up early for their shifts. Medicae staff who work triple rotations in the underhive. Munitorum clerks who stay late to fix the cogitator. They don't hide in the shadows. They blend in. They build reputations. They offer help when needed. They become dependable until the moment that dependability becomes a knife in the back. By the fourth generation, many hybrids are physically indistinguishable from baseline humans. These neophyte hybrids can pass inspections. They can enter the ranks of the Astra Militarum. They can take communion in the Ministorum's temples. They can be promoted, trusted, respected. Some have even been ordained. In some cases, entire squads of the PDF or Guard have been compromised, operating as loyal Imperial soldiers by day and transmitting secrets to the cult by night. It's not uncommon for these agents to supply weapons, troop schedules, or security codes to their hybrid kin beneath the surface. And all the while, the Imperial Command has no idea it is feeding the very thing that will one day rip its throat out. But the process is not just biological, it is cultural. The cult grows not only in bodies, but in belief. As its numbers swell, it begins to shape a religion around its patriarch. Shrines are erected in basements and tunnels. Icons are carved in secrecy, mimicking the image of the four-armed father, part man, part god, part beast. These altars are places of worship, but also recruitment. Here the cult preaches its gospel to the disillusioned and the damned. "We are the forgotten, the broken, the denied," the Magus says, "but soon we shall be ascended." To the laborers crushed beneath the Imperium's boot, to the mutants and the pariahs, to those left to rot in the depths of hive cities. This message resonates. Even the uninfected begin to follow. Not because of mind control, but because the cult offers what the Imperium never could: belonging, family, hope. And so the cult's numbers swell, not just with hybrids, but with believers. The so-called faithful may not carry the Genestealer gene, but their loyalty is just as fervent. They are given tasks, spreading the word, gathering supplies, hiding weapons. When the time comes, they will be given the blessing. But until then, they serve as the cult's eyes and ears in every strata of society. At this stage, the cult no longer hides in the shadows. It inhabits them. It is the gang that suddenly controls all trade in the sump sprawl. It is the clergy that begins to preach of the Sky Father rather than the Emperor. It is the new overseer at the forge who is just a little too eager to replace imperial records with his own. The corruption does not explode, it seeps, slowly, unstoppably. The Imperium, vast as it is, cannot perceive such rot until it is terminal. Administratum reports are lost. Arbeits officials go missing. PDF commanders report unexpected desertions. The signs are there, but always isolated, always explained away. By the time a planet realizes it's sick, the infection has already reached its heart. The cult does not rush. It does not panic. It does not strike until it knows it has won. Its patriarch senses when the time is right, when the shrines are built, when the neophytes are embedded, when the Magus has pacified dissent. Then, and only then, will the cult act. But that reckoning belongs to another chapter. For now, the seeds are sown, and they grow quietly. They are beneath your feet. They serve your drinks. They bless your wounded. They smile as they pass you in the street. And when the stars are right, they will rise, not as strangers, but as your brothers. In the Imperium of man, there are many enemies. Some strike with brute force, others with heretical doctrine or psychic storms. But the Genestealer Cults, those abominable progeny of the Tyranid hive mind, work differently. Their war is not waged in open daylight, nor even in whispered conspiracy. It is a process, an elegant, blasphemous cycle, not a sudden uprising, but a generational devouring, a slow and methodical inversion of biology, belief, and bloodlines. The horror is not merely that they infiltrate, it is that they do so with such inevitability, such calm purpose, that by the time you know they're there, they already own you. To understand their corruption is to understand their rhythm, a rhythm that echoes not with bolter fire, but with the beat of unborn hearts. The cycle begins, as it always does, with the first infection. A lone, pure strain genestealer enters a population. It does not announce itself. It does not need to. It watches. It selects. And when the moment is right, usually in a dark corridor, a forgotten alley, or a disused mine shaft, it strikes, not to kill, but to claim. The so-called Genestealer's kiss is no metaphor. It is a precise, deliberate biological act. The Genestealer's ovipositor tongue injects a parasitic gene seed deep into the victim's nervous system. No blood is drawn, no wound is visible. But within minutes, the host is irrevocably changed. They do not scream. They do not flee. They awaken. The host, now referred to as a Kintagi, becomes a living vessel of psychic devotion. No coercion is necessary. They feel elated, blessed. They return to their lives without hesitation, with no obvious signs of infection. To their friends and families, they seem content, serene, if anything improved. And then the true nightmare begins. The Contagi is now a carrier, When they breed, whether with a spouse, a partner, or even through more clinical means, their offspring are not human. They are hybrids, the first generation. These first-generation hybrids, sometimes known in ancient Mechanicus records as Neogenesis broodlings, are abominations in the classic sense. Bald heads swollen with overgrown craniums, double-jointed limbs ending in claws or talons, extra arms sprouting from shoulders and ribs. Some are born with no eyes, relying on echolocation. Others have mouths that split open like flowers into fanged maws. They cannot speak in human tongues, though they understand. They move strangely, hiss when excited, and cling to walls like insects. And yet, they are adored. The Kintagi parent sees nothing wrong. The infection has rewritten their soul. To them, the hybrid is beautiful. More than that, holy. The firstborn of a new era. They raise the creature in secret, often hiding it in basements, sewers, or the decommissioned levels of hive stacks. A second hybrid follows, then a third. Each is stranger than the last. But these are only the beginning. These first-generation hybrids mature and, in time, reproduce, either with humans or other hybrids. Their offspring, the second generation, are still monstrous, but less so. Some resemble twisted children with elongated skulls and vestigial claws that can be hidden under gloves. Others pass almost entirely as baseline human, until they laugh and reveal a double-jointed jaw or open their robes to expose a third limb. By the third generation, many hybrids can walk freely among the population. They are physically stronger, more agile, and share the psychic link back to the original pure strain. But to the untrained eye, they appear human, and this is where the real infection spreads. By the fourth generation, the hybrids are indistinguishable from Imperial citizens. They can enlist in the Astra Militarum, join the Mechanicus, serve in the local administratum or planetary enforcers. Some even become preachers in the ecclesiarchy. They can't be detected by medical scans, at least not without invasive psychic probing or complex genetic sequencing. These fourth-generation hybrids are known as Primaki. They are the ideal infiltrators. They smile, they bless, they take communion, they read the Imperial Creed from the pulpit, and all the while they are broadcasting telepathically back to their progenitor, building the network of minds that forms the broodmind. But the cycle does not end there. When a fourth-generation hybrid breeds, the result is not more human-like offspring, but a return to the beginning. The fifth generation is no hybrid at all. It is a pure-strain genestealer, identical in every genetic sense to the original invader. This is the cycle's cruel perfection. Like a spiral, it twists back upon itself, and from this new pure strain, the process begins anew. A single genestealer becomes dozens, dozens become hundreds, hundreds become thousands, an entire hidden population beneath the feet of an imperial world, all linked by psychic resonance, all obedient to the will of the cult's central figure, the Patriarch. The Patriarch is not elected, it is grown. The first genestealer to found the cult undergoes a metamorphosis as the brood expands. It grows larger, smarter, more psychically potent. Its chitinous frame warps with psychic muscle. It becomes less a warrior and more a god. The cult begins to worship it, openly if they are hidden enough, or secretly if they remain in the shadows. It is this figure that controls the cycle, not just through command, but through thought. It dreams, and the hybrids dream with it. It hungers, and they scavenge. It plots, and they obey. And so the infection continues, not simply biologically, but culturally. The hybrids are not just corrupted in body, they are taught, conditioned, raised from birth to believe in the coming ascension. They are told that the Star Children, the holy gods from beyond, will one day arrive to liberate the world. They are told that the false Imperium will be torn down, and that they, the faithful, will rise as the inheritors of the galaxy, that those who suffer now in the depths will be uplifted, that those who serve the four-armed emperor will be rewarded. To the outside world, these are just laborers, street preachers, dockhands, gangsters. But beneath the surface, in caverns carved by claws, an entire civilization pulses with belief. The cult becomes multi-generational. Entire families live and die in the embrace of the brood mind. Children raised by parents who were hybrids, who were raised by grandparents who were hybrids, and so on, until the very concept of humanity is forgotten. There are rituals, chants, holidays. There are sacred glyphs drawn on walls in promethium smoke and sanctified blood. There are songs sung to the tune of mining drills. It is not just an infestation, it is a society. But the genius of the cycle lies in its balance between growth and concealment. The cult does not strike at once. It does not act prematurely. If suspicion rises, it lays low. It removes the overzealous. It sacrifices the obvious. A neophyte is found with a malformed hand. He disappears. A child is born too monstrous. The birth records vanish. A magos, biologis, takes too much interest. He is found torn apart in the sump, and so the Imperium slumbers, unaware that the plague is already in its blood. Only when the cycle is complete, when the numbers are vast, when the weapons have been stolen, when the fourth generations have seized control of critical institutions, only then does the final phase begin, the day of ascension. But that too is not spontaneous. It is planned, coordinated. Entire planetary networks of cults exist that wait for one signal, one dream, one psychic flare from the brood mind. When the signal comes, the hidden generation, spanning decades of growth and integration, rises in unison. By then, no purge will be clean, no response will be fast enough. No astropath will live long enough to cry for help. Because this is not rebellion. It is birth. And by the time the Imperium sees the newborn, its eyes will already have been clawed out. That is the cycle. Not a disease, but a pattern. Not a heresy, but a design. Not an accident, but a weapon. And it is perfect. Because it never sleeps. Because it is already in motion. Because on 1,000 worlds right now, a smiling father cradles a child that is not quite human and prays to a god with 4 arms. And the stars begin to shift. In the dank hollows of sub-level catacombs, far below the echo of imperial hymnals and the blind stare of the Adeptus Arbites, a different kind of gospel is preached, not shouted from pulpits, but murmured in rust-choked tunnels, not recorded in holy scripture, but carved into sumpstone with claws and blood. It is the creed of the forgotten, the gospel of the downtrodden, the theology of the heretically hopeful. It is the cult of the Star Children, and it spreads not by conquest, but by faith. To the Imperium, the Genestealer cult is a genetic disease, a mutation, a biological heresy to be burned, dissected, and erased. But to those within it, to the hybrids, the infected, the faithful, it is religion. Their devotion is not a facade. It is not a tactical ruse. It is fervent, consuming, sincere. They do not serve the Tyranids. They worship them. And in that lie the roots of something more dangerous than tooth or claw. Belief. The first sermons are never written. They begin as whispers. A hybrid mother telling stories to her malformed children by the flickering light of a stolen lumen globe. A magus, swathed in tattered robes, tracing clawed fingers across the wall to draw the 4-limbed sigil. A neophyte murmuring to co-workers that the Emperor is false and that true deliverance comes from the void. These whispers become phrases, phrases become verses, verses become chants, and chants become doctrine. The theology is simple, yet insidiously powerful. The Imperium is a lie, a vast, rusting empire that feeds on the sweat and blood of its people, offering nothing in return but servitude, suffering, and silence. It promises salvation but delivers only decay. In this truth, the cult finds its wedge. It doesn't begin by offering alien ideology, it begins by validating human pain. "You are not broken," says the voice of the cult. "You are chosen." From the moment an infected parent raises their first hybrid child, a sacred narrative begins. They were touched by something greater. The patriarch is not a monster. He is a prophet. His children are not abominations. They are saints. And beyond the stars, their gods await. These gods are not named in imperial terms. The cult does not pray to the emperor. It venerates the star children, a mythic celestial race who will one day descend and sweep away the chains of human oppression. The faithful believe that these divine beings dwell among the stars, watching, guiding, waiting for the appointed time. In truth, these star children are the Tyranid hive fleets. But the cultists do not understand this. They do not see the devouring. They see ascension. It is a masterstroke of the hive mind. The cult is not forced into compliance. It is grown, groomed, and spiritually ensnared. Every pure-strain genestealer radiates a subtle psychic aura, a low-frequency empathic signal that molds the emotions and instincts of those around it. Those affected by the infection experience visions, dreams, revelations, not in the language of science, but in the language of faith. They see celestial light breaking through the void. They hear voices in the darkness promising freedom. They feel warmth where there should be cold, and they believe. The religious structure of a Genestealer cult is both alien and terrifyingly human. It mirrors the hierarchy of the Imperium in grotesque parody. At the apex stands the Patriarch, the first Genestealer and progenitor of the brood. To the cult, he is a living god, a fusion of flesh and fate. He does not speak in words. He does not command with force. He dreams, and his dreams ripple through the brood mind like scripture, shaping the beliefs and behaviors of thousands. His presence alone is enough to send the faithful into rapture. Cultists kneel before him, weep before him, bring offerings, flesh, icons, infants, and lay them at his talons. Below the Patriarch is the Magus, the high priest of the cult. Born of the fourth generation, the Magus often looks entirely human, save for the strange light in their eyes and the way their words seem to bypass the ear and enter directly into the soul. The Magus is not merely a speaker. They are a beacon, a psychic amplifier for the Patriarch's will. They organize rituals, interpret dreams, anoint new faithful. Their charisma is unnatural, their sermons hypnotic. Entire neighborhoods have converted after a single appearance. Alongside the Magus stands the Primus, the general of the faithful. Where the Magus inspires, the Primus acts. Cold, calculating, and unrelenting, the Primus plans the day of ascension with the precision of a battlefield tactician. They train the faithful in combat. They choose which armories to infiltrate, which water lines to poison, which officials to assassinate. To the faithful, the Primus is a saint of strategy, a manifestation of the Star Children's will. The Brood Coven, made up of the Patriarch, Magus, and Primus, is often worshipped as a trinity, mind, voice, and hand. Shrines are built in their image, with effigies sculpted from scrap metal, bone, and sacred stone. Their likenesses are painted on underhive walls, their names etched into weapons, their blessings invoked before every act of sabotage. The rank and file of the cult are no less devout. Each hybrid, from clawed acolyte to disguised neophyte, sees themselves as part of a divine purpose. The cult teaches that they are midwives of a new galaxy, that their actions, however small, contribute to a grand cosmic birth. When they sabotage a generator or deliver a package laced with parasites or slit the throat of a sleeping arbitrator, they do so with reverence. It is not terrorism, it is liturgy, and the rituals run deep. In the sewers beneath hive cities, cultists gather for nocturnal masses. Hundreds cram into rusted chambers lit by flickering lumen rods, their bodies swaying to the droning chants of the magus. They paint their faces with oil and ash, brand themselves with the sigil of the four-armed emperor, and drink from chalices filled with nutrient ichor harvested from dead beasts or from fallen foes. They pray not for victory, but for arrival, for the coming of the star children. They chant, "The stars shall bleed, the sky shall crack, the faithful shall rise." During the sacred rite of anointment, a new hybrid, recently born or freshly awakened, is brought before the patriarch. They are laid in a circle of ash and scrap metal, surrounded by chanting cultists as the magus performs the binding words, a psychic imprinting that deepens the hybrid's connection to the brood mind. Some do not survive the process. Their minds shatter under the pressure. But those who do emerge as true believers, ready to kill, ready to die. Other ceremonies include the rite of molt, where dying acolytes offer their flesh to feed the cult's young, and the covenant of embers, where whole districts are burned as offerings to the gods above, often after being stripped of resources and valuables to fuel the uprising. It is not merely faith, it is identity, and it is not limited to hybrids. Humans, too, can become believers. Called the unblessed faithful, these are uninfected individuals who have been converted by exposure to the cult's ideology. They are often the most dangerous. Untouched by genetic corruption, they can pass any medici scan, fool any purity test, yet they will die gladly for the cult. They believe without compulsion. In their minds, the cult offers freedom from the Imperium's yoke, and they are not entirely wrong. For to many, the Imperium is not a benevolent father, but a cruel master. When an underhive ganger has lost 3 brothers to starvation and another to Adeptus Arbit's brutality, and then hears a magus preach of a new dawn, why wouldn't he listen? When an overworked hab factory mother is told her malformed child is not a curse, but a miracle, why wouldn't she believe? The cult grows not through fear, but through love, twisted, alien, but genuine, and that is what makes it unstoppable. There are those who think fire and blade are enough, that if you kill the hybrids, burn the tunnels, shatter the icons, you can end the cult. But you cannot kill a faith, especially not one that dreams. For even when a cult is burned away, a single surviving neophyte can whisper the creed to another outcast, another lost soul, and the Star Children's Church is born again. As long as suffering exists in the Imperium, so too will the belief that something better waits in the stars. And so they wait, and they preach, and they prepare, because for them ascension is not metaphor, it is coming. And when the sky cracks open and the stars fall to earth, they will not scream, they will sing. It is a myth that the Genestealer cults are chaotic, that they are a rabble of mutants lurching through tunnels, unified by nothing more than a twisted cause and a shared disease. To believe this is to misunderstand the true nature of their threat. The cults are not mobs. They are not mobs because they do not think like mobs. They think like organisms, single, vast, multi-bodied entities with minds spread thin across thousands of skulls. Their actions, their plans, even their rebellions are not the product of disorganized uprising, but of deliberate, unified will. A will with many hands, but one mind. That mind is not born of language, not of command structure or rank. It is born of instinct. It is the brood mind. Imagine a hive of insects, yet without chaos, every drone moving as if part of an unseen machine, every step taken in lockstep, every claw lifted in perfect rhythm. not because they follow orders, but because they are the order. This is the Genestealer Cult. The broodmind is not telepathy as humans understand it. It is a psychic phenomenon born of tyranid biology, a field of shared thought radiating outward from the cult's core, touching every infected mind with threads finer than silk, stronger than steel. It is emotion, will, sensation, all shared. A hum beneath consciousness, felt more than heard, a presence behind the eyes. To the faithful, it is not control, it is comfort. The broodmind does not enslave, it includes. Each cultist feels it as kinship, as unity, as love. They do not question it any more than a heart questions why it beats. It is simply there, guiding them, filling their dreams, anchoring them to their family. They never feel alone. They are never lost. The broodmind binds them. And it begins with one. The patriarch is the nucleus, the origin, the mind that births the others. When a genestealer first arrives on a planet and begins to infect, its psychic presence is minor, almost imperceptible. But as the first generation is born, and then the second, a pattern begins to form. The cult is not just multiplying, it is resonating. Each new hybrid is a tuning fork, vibrating with the psychic pitch of its sire. Together they form a frequency, and that frequency feeds the patriarch. The genestealer undergoes a transformation. It grows in mass, in cognition, in power. Its claws lengthen, its exoskeleton thickens. But more importantly, its mind expands. It becomes no longer a beast, but a conductor, a node of psychic command, pulsing thought into the minds of every broodkin. The first signs of a mature broodmind appear not in speech, but in synchrony. A dozen hybrids in separate locations sabotage the same cogitator relay at the same moment. Two dock workers who've never met use the exact same phrasing when asked about missing supplies. A child in a distant hive tier cries out in fear moments before a patrol raids a cult enclave, because the broodmind knew and the child felt. This is not strategy in the human sense. There is no meeting, no council, no transmission. There is only thought spread like mycelium across minds, whispering direction. And it is not infallible, but it is fast. Within this network, roles are not chosen. They emerge. The Magus rises first. Born of the fourth generation, the Magus is the cult's psychic priest, the interpreter of dreams, the voice that wraps the broodmind in words. While the patriarch speaks in raw intent, the Magus gives it form, a translator between God and congregation. Their psychic talents are vast, often rivaling Imperial-sanctioned psychers. But more than their raw power, it is their influence that terrifies the Inquisition. The Magus can inspire crowds with a whisper, convince planetary governors to lower defenses, walk among the faithful and awaken dormant hybrids with a glance. Some magi are scholars, others are firebrands, all are dangerous. For while they answer to the patriarch, they carry its will in a way no other can. And through them, the cult does not just act, it believes. Then comes the Primus. Where the Magus guides the soul, the Primus guides the blade. Also of the fourth generation, the Primus is the cult's executioner general, cold, calculating, bred for leadership and efficiency. The Primus sees the battlefield before it exists, plans years in advance, identifies weak points in local defense networks, arranges the accidental deaths of Arbite's commanders, positions assets where they will matter most on the day of ascension. Unlike the Magus, the Primus speaks rarely, but every word is measured. Every order becomes gospel. Cultists die gladly to fulfill their designs. Neophytes offer themselves as suicide bombers if it will break a wall. Acolytes wait in ventilation shafts for days just to spring an ambush when the Primus gives the signal. To the faithful, the Magus is the prophet. The Primus is the blade. The Brood Coven, formed by the triumvirate of Patriarch, Magus, and Primus, is the cult's sacred trinity. Around them spiral layers of purpose, each more specialized, more adapted, more horrifying. There is the Clamavus, the Vox Seer and Information Leech. The Clamavus taps into local communication systems, hijacking signals to spread cult propaganda in coded frequencies. Entire Hab sectors wake to hymns praising the Star Children, blasted over stolen loudspeakers. Emergency broadcasts are rerouted to cult-controlled bunkers. Imperial commands are scrambled, delayed, or silenced entirely. The Nexos, the data strategist, does not fight, does not preach. It maps, it remembers. A Nexos never forgets a schedule, a patrol route, a supply line. They construct battle plans by overlaying stolen cartographs, creating a web of insurgency from the inside out. They point, and the cult strikes. The Biophagus is the geneticist priest, operating in subterranean labs, splicing tissue, feeding mutants with viral agents. It is through the Biophagus that the aberrants are born, muscle-bound, twisted monsters of brute strength and mindless devotion. Creatures too unstable for subtlety, but perfect for tearing through bunker doors on the day of ascension. Then there is the Sanctus, the holy assassin. Pale-faced, eyes blank, body laced with narcotic dampeners, they move without fear. Armed with silenced rifles or poisoned blades, they kill those who suspect too much. Arbitrators, Medici officials, inquisitorial aides. One bullet, one body, one secret buried forever. And in the background, always watching, always alert, the Locus, silent guardians of the Brood Coven. They are duelists without equal, standing motionless for hours beside the Magus, waiting to strike. If you see one move, it is already too late. But perhaps the most chilling truth of all is that no single part of this hierarchy thinks of itself as separate. They are not leaders and followers. They are limbs, fingers twitching at the same command, hearts beating to the same pulse. From the lowliest neophyte in the Hab sector to the Magus in their sanctum, each believes utterly in the cult, the brood mind, the ascension. They share memories, emotions, urges. If one suffers, others feel it. If one dies, their thoughts echo in the minds of the living. Even pain becomes communion, even death becomes offering. This psychic web is nearly impossible to detect until it is too late. Even trained psychers struggle to distinguish it from ambient warp resonance. Only the most sensitive souls catch the subtle pressure in the air when standing in a brood's domain, the tension in the chest, the crawling thought that is not your own. By the time the Inquisition realizes that a brood mind is active, the cult has already reached critical mass. To destroy the cult, you must kill its heart. But when you strike the Patriarch, the brood screams. And when you strike the Magus, the cult mourns. And when you strike the Primus, the plan survives, because the brood mind remembers. This is why the Genestealer cults are feared, not because they are many, but because they are one. One mind, one purpose, one dream that spans generations, flesh and thought. And as the hive fleets drift closer, drawn by the psychic signal rising from 1,000 such brood minds across the Imperium, that dream deepens. And the cults, still hidden, still smiling, wait. Because the brood mind does not sleep, it watches. In the grim machinery of the Imperium, where men are cogs and hope is a regulated commodity, rebellion is not born from rage, it is born from desperation. And nowhere is this truer than in the places where the Genestealer cults flourish. Among the soot-stained miners, the forgotten manufactorum workers, the laboring dregs of hive cities and frontier worlds, something stirs. Not merely infection, but ideology. Not just sedition, but salvation, or at least the illusion of it. For the cult does not rise waving banners of Xeno's conquest. It rises promising freedom. Freedom from chains, from toil, from the Emperor's blind and distant rule. It speaks to the broken and tells them, "You are not cursed. You are chosen." And in this lie, wrapped in beauty, is the most powerful weapon the Genestealer cults have ever possessed: the promise of liberation. It begins with a whisper, not a command, not a sermon. A simple phrase passed from worker to worker in the shadowed corners of an underhive drinking hall or the recesses of a collapsed mine shaft. There is something more. That phrase is spoken by someone like them, a neighbor, a fellow worker, someone who has survived a dozen collapses in the mines, someone who never seems to grow hungry, someone who listens, who understands. They call it the calling. In the depths of suffering, this whisper is not questioned. It is welcomed. From that moment, the one who hears it begins to see differently. They notice the corruption of the planetary governor's staff, the abuses of the Adeptus Arbites, the silence of the ecclesiarchy priests when families starve. They remember how the administratum promised repairs that never came, how the off-world tithes kept leaving while the people kept dying. The Imperium teaches obedience. The cult offers purpose. The message spreads, not through broadcast, not through written pamphlets. Such things would draw attention. The cult preaches by example. It finds the wounded and heals them with hidden medici tools. It shares food in times of famine, always with a soft word, a comforting gesture. The hybrid who cannot speak holds a child's hand during a fever. The neophyte brings a lantern into the dark when no one else will risk the tunnels. They become necessary to the people around them. And then, slowly, the message returns. The Emperor is not your father. He has never heard your prayers, but the Star Children have. The myth grows. In frontier worlds, the cult appears as a promise of communal unity, speaking of gods who walk among them, who share in their suffering. In hive cities, the cult adopts the tone of revolution, a righteous rising of the forgotten underclass. On mining colonies, it is a divine reckoning, a cleansing of the corrupt upper tiers by the holy light of the void. The beauty of the cult's message is its flexibility. It bends to the culture, the needs, the fears of the local population. But beneath every sermon, behind every altar, the truth is the same. When the Star Children arrive, you will be free. That freedom takes many forms. To the deeply infected, to the hybrids and the brood coven, it is literal ascension. They believe, fully and without doubt, that the Tyranids are their gods made flesh. That when the hive fleet arrives, they will be uplifted into a new plane of existence. Some believe they will become more than flesh, pure energy, consciousness, light. Others imagine themselves transformed into perfect beings, cast off from the Imperium's rot and reshaped by divine biology. But to the unblessed faithful, those not yet infected, not yet genetically altered, the promise is more earthly. The cult does not immediately demand they offer themselves. It simply welcomes them, offers community, food, shelter, a place to belong, and eventually a place to believe. It tells them, the world is a prison, but your chains are illusions. Come, break them. These promises are intoxicating. The Imperium offers survival. The cult offers hope. And even the most faithful Imperial citizen, if pushed hard enough, starved long enough, beaten often enough, will listen. The cult is careful. It builds slowly. Every liberated soul becomes another voice, another set of hands, and with each new believer, the cult's web of control grows. They do not speak openly of war. Not at first. They speak of renewal. Old manufactorums become sanctuaries. Workers gather after hours to hear the magus speak, cloaked and hooded, the flickering light casting his human face into something more. He tells them that soon they will no longer serve the corpse emperor, but the living gods. He promises that the oppressors will be swept aside, that no child will go hungry again, that each soul will have a place in the coming order. It is blasphemy, it is heresy, it is irresistible. And beneath the words lies a truth the Imperium refuses to acknowledge. The cult does offer something better, at least for a time. For in its early stages, the cult brings stability. Its members care for one another. They share, they heal, they defend. They do not hoard, they do not exploit. It is a parody of utopia, bought with stolen supplies and false doctrine, but to the desperate it feels real. It feels like liberation. But the promises are not just spiritual, they are political. The cult manipulates existing grievances. It encourages workers' strikes, whispers sabotage into the ears of angry supervisors. It creates dissent, then offers to solve it. Your machines break because the off-worlders send you broken parts. Your water is rationed because the nobles bathe in wine. The Arbites protect them, not you. They have had their time. Now it is our time. And when the rebellion comes, when the day of ascension is declared, those same promises become orders. Burn the Factorum, kill the overseers, disable the orbital comms, destroy the Administratum's records, kill the guardsmen while they sleep. It is not spontaneous. It is a controlled detonation of years, sometimes decades, of careful indoctrination. The people rise not with confusion, but with clarity, with purpose, with weapons that the cult has secretly stockpiled, with knowledge of patrol routes and security protocols and troop deployments that the cult has been gathering for years. It is not revolt, it is retribution. And yet, even as the planet burns, even as the cult rises to slaughter the loyalists, the promise remains. The faithful still believe that the Star Children will descend in glory, that their salvation is nigh. They do not see the sky boiling with spores. They do not feel the warp shadow that precedes the hive fleet. Or if they do, they interpret it. The darkness is not doom, it is deliverance. The poison in the air is not death, it is purification. The Tyranids are not here to consume them, they are here to welcome them. It is a belief so deep that even as their flesh is flayed, even as their cities melt, many cultists sing. They offer themselves willingly, they embrace their gods. And the High Fleet obliges, without recognition, without mercy. The promise of liberation ends not with paradise, but with obliteration. Yet that truth never reaches the next cult, because the cycle resets. A single genestealer escapes the wreckage, or perhaps a spore drifts unseen onto a salvage freighter. A worker is infected again, and on another world the whispers begin anew. There is something more. There is something better. You are not broken. You are chosen. And once again the promise of liberation is made, not by weapons, not by force, but by faith. And for the countless billions abandoned by the Imperium, that faith is worth dying for, or worse, living long enough to see it fulfilled. It begins with silence, not the stillness of peace, but the quiet before annihilation. In the depths of a hive city, in the black void of a mining colony, in the winding tunnels of forgotten frontier worlds, the faithful stand ready. Their breaths come slow, their eyes are wide, their fingers twitch with anticipation. For years they have labored in the dark, for years they have whispered to each other, worshipped their gods, carved the sigils of the four-armed emperor into the stone. They have waited, and now the time has come. They call it the Day of Ascension. But what it truly is the end. No 2 days of ascension are alike. Each world is different, each cult unique, its size, method, and growth dictated by local culture, geography, and opportunity. But all share the same final truth. They do not rise until it is too late to stop them. The planning is meticulous. The rebellion is not spontaneous. It is not a riot or a wild uprising. It is a choreographed purge, executed with military precision and messianic fervor. From the outside, it seems sudden. A day like any other until the sky turns red with flare smoke and the air fills with alarm klaxons and gunfire. Until Vox lines fall silent and Arbite's patrols vanish into the alleys, never to return. Until Prometheum lines rupture, setting entire districts ablaze. But to the cult, it is ceremony. They wear their finest robes, stained in sacred oils and blood. Their banners, hidden for decades, are unfurled and hung from manufactorum gantries and hive balconies. Sacred glyphs are painted on tanks, transports, and weapons long concealed in underground caches. Neophytes step forward not as workers, but as warriors. Acolytes bare their claws and teeth with pride. Even the most twisted aberrants, kept chained in darkness, are loosed, roaring with praise as they tear down iron gates and barricades. The Magus stands before the faithful, arms raised, lips parted in silent communion with the broodmind. And then the signal is given, a psychic pulse, a mental flame. The ascension begins. The attack is multifaceted. It does not target a single place. It targets everything. The cult has spent years identifying vulnerabilities. They strike simultaneously at power stations, defense grids, Vox relays, PDF barracks, Medikey stations, food depots. Arbit's precincts are first to fall, usually ambushed from within by cult sympathizers embedded as janitors, scribes, or prisoners. Next come the PDF command hubs, sabotaged at their cores. Transports and tanks are disabled. Ammunition supplies are rigged to explode. Within minutes, coordination collapses. Planetary defense forces, already under strength and poorly supplied, are thrown into chaos. Some units defect entirely, led by officers who were neophytes all along. Others are simply overwhelmed, facing enemies they never even knew existed. And the true horror: most of the cultists are not soldiers. They are miners, engineers, sanitation workers, yet they fight with unity, with purpose, and with an unshakable sense of destiny. They fight with mining lasers repurposed into anti-personnel weapons, with clawed industrial augmetics, with converted drilling rigs that smash through armored vehicles like paper. Every street becomes a war zone, every building a fortress, every sewer, every ventilation shaft, every transit route. The cult already owns them. They are not fighting to survive, they are fighting to ascend. Throughout the chaos, the brood coven leads. The patriarch remains hidden deep in the cult's sanctum, feeding psychic command into the minds of thousands. It watches the war unfold as a conductor watches an orchestra. The Magus, standing above the battlefield, radiates waves of psychic inspiration, bolstering the faithful, confusing loyalist response teams. The Primus operates at the tactical level, ordering ambushes, strikes, and diversions, always 3 steps ahead of the defenders. The cult does not just attack, it maneuvers. It isolates key loyalist assets, cuts them off, encircles them. Vox scramblers ensure no distress signal leaves the planet. Infiltrated orbital platforms are disabled or turned on their defenders. Spaceports are seized or sabotaged to prevent off-world escape or reinforcement. And amid the devastation, the faithful chant, "We are the true born. We are the children of the stars. The false emperor will burn in the light of ascension." They chant even as they fall, even as last fire tears through them. Death means nothing now. Their gods are coming. The cult believes to its core that this rebellion is not only necessary, it is holy. Every death is a sacrifice. Every act of sabotage is a prayer. Every clawed strike is a hymn. They believe truly and deeply that the Star Children, divine beings of light and perfection, will descend upon their world and usher them into paradise. What they do not understand, what they are never allowed to understand, is what their gods truly are. They are not angels, they are Tyranids, and they are hungry. Across the stars, in the black silence of interstellar space, something feels the pulse of the brood mind rising. The psychic signal grows, amplified by the cult's collective belief and the mental might of its patriarch. It is a flare in the warp, a siren song of biological readiness. And the hive fleet hears it. The hive mind does not feel joy, it does not feel anticipation. It calculates. It feeds. It marks the world as ripe, prepared not by bombardment but by worship. And the invasion begins. In the upper atmosphere, dark shapes begin to descend, biovessels of chitin and bone, bloated with spore mines and digestion organisms. Atmospheric pressure shifts. The air thickens. The sky burns purple and green as the first spore pods rain down. The cult rejoices. They gather in city squares, in the ruins of broken administratum halls, in the belly of hive towers, arms outstretched, faces lifted. They believe salvation has arrived, even as the spores erupt in acidic storms, even as the air becomes unbreathable, even as massive bioforms tear through buildings and turn allies into meat. They worship, they sing. Some even walk toward the monstrous forms of the Tyranid vanguard, genestealers, warriors, carnifexes, only to be torn apart. They do not scream. They do not run. They smile, because in their eyes this is not death, this is ascension. But the truth is far colder. The hive mind does not recognize them as kin. They were useful, tools, signal flares. Now they are nutrients. The Tyranid bioforms do not distinguish between the cult and the rest of the population. All are consumed, all are processed. The brood mind collapses. The psychic web disintegrates as its nodes are digested. The magus is slain. The primus is reduced to pulp. The patriarch is torn apart by the very claws it summoned. There is no judgment, no betrayal, just feeding. And when it is done, the hive fleet leaves nothing. The cities are stripped of biomass, the oceans boiled and drunk, the soil turned to sludge. And yet, even in their final moments, many cultists do not resist. They kneel, they pray, because their faith was real. And sometimes, in their last heartbeat, they truly do ascend, though not as they believed. They become part of the hive mind, not as gods, but as fuel. Across the galaxy, inquisitors study what remains, if anything remains at all. Sometimes only a single astropathic message survives, a single pic capture of the uprising, a vox recording of a preacher's final speech. And it always ends the same way. The stars are coming. We are ready. We are not afraid. And then silence. The day of ascension is not the beginning of freedom. It is the climax of a tragedy that began with a kiss. It is not the birth of a new order. It is the final heartbeat before annihilation. But it happens again, and again, and again, because the Imperium, bloated and blind, cannot look into the shadows of every world, and so long as one genestealer survives, so long as one faithful voice whispers the old chant, the cult will return. And somewhere on a forgotten mining moon or a distant agri-world, a new worker stands in a tunnel holding the hand of a pale, wide-eyed child, and the whisper returns, "Soon we will rise." Across the Imperium, there are worlds that do not scream. They do not broadcast distress signals. They do not cry out for aid. They vanish, not in flame or thunder, but in silence. Administratum files go unupdated. Tithes fail to arrive. Astropaths reach out into the void and are met with cold echoes. And when the Imperium finally remembers these places, When it sends ships to investigate, they find only bones and dust, or worse, nothing at all. These are the worlds in shadow, planets claimed not by invasion or bombardment, but by subversion. Planets where the Genestealer cults have bloomed in the dark, consumed everything, and then vanished into the void. And they are far more common than anyone dares admit. There are no records that list them all. The Inquisition has tried. The Ordo Xenos keeps fragmented logs of suspected outbreaks, possible infestations, red-flagged mining colonies, and fringe agri-worlds. But the nature of the cult ensures most remain undetected until it is far, far too late. Each of these worlds followed the same pattern. Contact is lost. A relay goes silent. An Auspex array fails to return expected telemetry. At first, this is unremarkable. The Imperium is vast. Systems fail. Warp storms disrupt travel and communication regularly. But when the silence persists, when 3 months become 6, and 6 becomes a year, someone takes notice. A recon ship is dispatched, an explorator fleet, a rogue trader, an inquisitorial kill team, and they arrive to find a tomb. Sometimes the planet's surface shows clear signs of destruction: burned hives, collapsed manufactorums, vitrified soil where orbital bombardments have scorched the land. But often, nothing is left. The cities are gone, not destroyed, digested. The biosphere is stripped, leaving only wind-carved rock. No fauna, no trees, no air. But in the cracks of stone, in the soot of ruins, Inquisitors find the signs, the four-armed sigil scorched into the wall of a collapsed hab block, a shrine buried in rubble, half-fused icons of the Emperor defaced and reformed into the shape of the Star Children, and bones, always bones, twisted misshapen skeletons, some still clutching each other, others sprawled in ritual poses of worship. This is the legacy of the Genestealer Cults. These are the worlds they took in silence. One such world was Gosar Quintus, a deep mining colony on the edge of Ultima Segmentum. Officially, it was lost to a seismic disaster. But the truth, uncovered only later by Deathwatch kill teams, tells a far different story. A single Genestealer arrived decades earlier, likely hidden aboard a Magos Explorator's hauler. It seeded the infection quietly, choosing the deepest mining tunnels as its lair. By the time the Administratum noticed anomalies in productivity and civilian behavior, the cult's influence had reached the highest tiers of the planetary government. A mining accident was staged to conceal the final cull of loyalist holdouts. Vox towers were disabled. Defense Auspex relays sabotaged. When the cult finally rose, they encountered no resistance. The planet's defenders were already theirs. By the time the Tyranids arrived, the planet had already stopped existing in the eyes of the Imperium. A quiet world, a shadowed world, gone. There is Gyron Delta, a verdant agri-world once known for its lush grain fields and high tithes. For decades, it was a model of imperial efficiency until shipments stopped. When a Mechanicus survey team landed, they found the planet cloaked in fog and death. The cult had taken the farmers first, then the enforcers. The Magus used the planetary Vox to broadcast daily sermons in 6 languages. By the time the surveyors arrived, the cult was gone, devoured by Hive Fleet Gorgon. All that remained were cracked silos, fields of ash, and a single functioning Vox tower, endlessly repeating, "The harvest is complete." Glory to the Star Children. Even Hive worlds are not immune. On Relax, a minor industrial hive in the Segmentum Solar, a Genestealer cult infiltrated the water purification facilities. It began by infecting the workers in the lower levels, who in turn contaminated entire sectors through the recycled water system. Within years, over 60% of the hive population was genetically compromised. When the Inquisition finally intervened, the cult staged a mock surrender. Thousands of cultists emerged peacefully, laying down their arms, presenting themselves as reformed citizens of the Emperor. It was a trap. The Magus detonated the hive's core, collapsing the entire superstructure. The city fell into its own foundations, 8 million dead. Nothing left to save. Another shadow, another forgotten file. The tragedy of these worlds is not just their loss, but the denial that follows. Many within the Imperium refuse to believe the Genestealer threat is as widespread as it is. The High Lords are silent on the matter. Planetary governors fear the stigma of association, and the Mechanicus often suppresses outbreaks to protect their own research. Even within the Inquisition, factions argue. Some see the cults as mere symptoms of the Tyranid menace, others as existential threats in their own right. This bureaucratic blindness allows the cults to thrive. Every forgotten moon, every warp-ravaged colony, every backwater world with a failing astropath. These are breeding grounds, not for Tyranids, but for faith in the Star Children. Faith that festers, faith that burns. And what of the survivors? Sometimes a world falls, but a ship escapes. A battered freighter, captained by desperate refugees, makes the warp jump. They tell tales of monsters, of shadows with claws, of brothers and sisters turned into something else. The Inquisition listens, and then, more often than not, the ship is sterilized, the crew terminated, the record sealed. But sometimes, something hitches a ride. A hybrid hidden in a cargo crate, a genestealer curled in the maintenance ducts, a magus disguised beneath a bioscanned cowl, identity falsified with stolen data. And when that ship reaches the next world, trade hub, forge moon, pilgrim colony, the infection begins again. Another whisper, another faithful heart, another world destined to fall. The Imperium is too vast to protect. This is the central tragedy. It has too many worlds, too many people, too many secrets. For every hive planet defended by 1,000 regiments, there are 100 minor colonies left to rot. And in those cracks, the cults root deep. They don't need fleet support. They don't need planetary bombardments. They need time. They need silence. And they always find it. To the Ordo Xenos, these silent worlds are referred to with grim finality, cleansed planets. But this is not accurate, because the cults are never truly gone. Even when the Tyranids devour them, even when orbital fire scours their cities, something always survives. A data slate, a gene seed cache, a ritual object buried in the rock, a Pura strain aboard a drifting wreck. The cult is not a force, it is an idea, and ideas cannot be killed. Not easily, so the Imperium forgets, or pretends to. It marks the world as lost to warp anomalies, or tectonic instability, or Xenos plague. The bureaucrats stamp the parchment, the scribes update the charts, and the silence returns. But beneath that silence, in the darkness between stars, the cult whispers still, waiting, growing, and promising yet again. This world is yours. The Imperium is weak. Ascension comes. They are the last line, the forgotten answer to questions too dangerous to ask. In the Imperium of man, where heresy festers behind loyalty, where corruption grows beneath banners of faith, there exists one institution that dares to look into the abyss without blinking. The Inquisition. They are not gods, they are not saints. They are men and women with iron minds and broken souls, who walk paths that others cannot even speak of. And when they confront the Genestealer Cults, it is not a battle of blade and bolt. It is a battle of truth against delusion, of knowledge against infection, of will against the slow, inevitable creep of shadow. For them, every Genestealer cult uncovered is not just a threat, it is a failure. A revelation that something monstrous has grown within the Imperium's skin for decades. unseen, unchallenged, thriving, and by the time an Inquisitor arrives, it is already too late. The Inquisition first became aware of the Genestealer threat not through glorious battle, but through pattern recognition. Fragmented reports, mining accidents, disappearing populations, cult-like behavior erupting in remote territories, a single hybrid captured on a Mechanicus research world, a pure strain specimen killed during a boarding action on a space hulk. At first, these incidents seemed unrelated, just more noise in a galaxy of screams. But certain Inquisitors, of the Ordo Xenos primarily, saw the connections. They noticed that many of these events preceded Tyranid invasions. They noted the presence of Xenos iconography, four-armed gods, and signs of psychic influence that did not align with known warp signatures. And so the hunt began. For an Inquisitor, uncovering a Genestealer cult is unlike any other investigation. There is no external enemy to target, no fortress to storm. The cult does not come with banners and bolters. It comes with smiles, with loyal workers, with perfect records, entire districts that run more efficiently than those untouched by infection. In fact, many cults appear as paragons of productivity. Crime is low, citizens are content, factories exceed quotas, until they don't, until one shipment never arrives, until a governor suddenly changes policy, until an astropath picks up a wrongness in the local warp signature. That is when the Inquisition is summoned, and that is when they realize they're walking into a trap. The first stage is always uncertainty. An Inquisitor arrives with their retinue, interrogators, acolytes, perhaps a few Death Watch or Sisters of Silence. They operate undercover, relying on local contacts, informants, and old data. They check records, interview civilians, cross-reference reports, and what they find is a wall of normalcy. The cult is expert at presenting the illusion of imperial compliance. The corrupted magos or administratum clerk who should raise alarm speaks perfect High Gothic, quotes the creed, wears their rosette with pride. Their data is flawless, their demeanor loyal. Only when examined at depth do the cracks begin to show. Subtle discrepancies in birth records, genetic anomalies passed off as natural mutation, public sermons that, when translated, refer not to the Emperor, but to the Father of Unity. And when the Inquisitor begins to push, the cult responds. But it does not do so with force. It does so with kindness, hospitality, cooperation, smiles. The priest offers lodging. The magus, masquerading as a civic advisor, offers administrative support. The workers greet the Inquisitor with admiration. Because the cult knows, the moment it resists, it gives itself away. So instead, it waits. But the Inquisitor knows the signs. They know that a smiling city in the Imperium is a city hiding something deeply wrong. They probe deeper. They deploy auspex sweeps into the sublevels. They intercept encrypted transmissions. They follow the quiet ones, the janitor who works the night shift, the child with the unnatural eyes, the factory manager who never blinks. And then, the moment comes. The wall cracks. A hidden room is discovered. A shrine built in a sewage tunnel, carved with 4 arms and crowned skulls. A priest collapses in psychic seizure during questioning. A civilian detonates a concealed explosive rather than be taken alive. Then the truth breaks open like a wound. The second stage is containment. Once the Inquisitor has confirmed the infection, there is no time for bureaucracy, no petitions, no orders. They move without warning. They assemble all loyal elements, PDF regiments, Arbites, Mechanicus support, if they can be trusted. Often they cannot. The cult's infection runs deep. Loyal soldiers may be neophytes. Arbites officers may be cultists in disguise. Medici staff might be altering patient files to protect hybrid gestation. The Inquisitor must be ruthless. They purge, interrogate, cleanse. Entire departments are sterilized, whole sections of cities cordoned off with quarantine protocols. Flamers sweep through hab blocks. Vox traffic is shut down. Astropaths are executed to prevent psychic flare signals reaching orbit. And still, it is not enough. Because the moment the cult knows it has been discovered, it acts. The third stage is always war. No matter how careful the Inquisitor, no matter how precise, the cult is faster. It has been preparing for this day for years. The caches are stocked, the troops are armed, the sabotage already done. The day of ascension begins, not as rebellion, but as preemption. The Inquisitor becomes the hunted. Acolytes vanish. Arbite's precincts fall silent. Vox intercepts pick up chants and gunfire. The cult rises in full. The Inquisitor must now fight two battles, one in the open, leading remaining loyalist forces in a desperate attempt to hold ground, and one in the dark, attempting to kill the cult's psychic core before it signals the hive mind. Because once the signal is sent, nothing will stop what follows. In the worst cases, the Inquisitor is forced to make a terrible decision: to destroy the world, to exterminatus the entire biosphere, sterilizing the infection in fire before the Hive fleet arrives. Many hesitate, some do not. Records exist, sealed behind 10 layers of cipher, of Inquisitors authorizing the death of 20 billion to prevent the rise of a single cult. These are not madmen. They are not evil. They are simply men and women who understand the stakes, because one infected world can cost a sector, and one spared cult can doom millions. But not all stories end in ash. Some Inquisitors succeed. They uncover the Magus before the signal is sent. They kill the Patriarch. They break the broodmind. In these rare victories, the cult collapses, its hierarchy shattered, its members confused, broken, leaderless. What follows is no less grim. Mass purges, memory cleansing, entire populations sterilized or relocated. The Inquisition leaves nothing behind, because the cult can come back. A single hybrid escaping off-world is enough to begin the cycle anew. For the Inquisition, the Genestealer Cult is not just a Xenos threat. It is a spiritual war, a war of faith, of trust, of infiltration. It is the fear that every friend is a stranger, that every smiling face hides claws, that every cathedral is built atop a nest, and they carry that burden alone. They are not thanked, they are not praised, they are feared, as they should be, because they are the only ones who can look into the void of a cultist's eyes and say, "I see you," and then burn them to ash. This is the cost of vigilance. This is the burden of the Inquisition. And even as they scour one world clean, they know another is already lost. The cult is everywhere. The infection is timeless, and the fire never sleeps. Before the day of ascension, before the uprising and fire, before the Magus declares revolution and the Patriarch unleashes its psychic roar, there are tunnels. Miles upon miles of lightless corridors, rusted access ways, under-hive burrows, and ancient forgotten passages carved when the stars were young. These are the arteries of every hive world. Beneath every towering spire of imperial order, there exists a mirror realm, a shadow empire built from decay, fungus, filth, and silence. And it is here, always here, that the Genestealer cults are born, for while the Imperium thrives above, it rots below. And in the rot, something holy grows. There is no daylight in the Underhive. The people who dwell there have never seen the sky. Many no longer believe it exists. They live by phosphor light and the glow of algae farms. They eat corpse starch and drink recycled water that has passed through 100 bodies before their own. They work in foundries that leak chemical smog, or in recycling plants filled with bio-waste and the shrieking machines of endless consumption. They do not dream, until the cult finds them. It begins with a gesture. a hand outstretched in darkness, a figure stepping from the shadows, robed not in finery, but in rags, rags dyed purple, marked with clawed sigils, a voice speaking softly in their own tongue. "Brother, you are not alone anymore." The Underhive is the cult's cradle. It offers everything they need: secrecy, desperation, and space. So much space. Beneath a single hive city, there can be hundreds of levels, hab stacks from 1,000 years ago, sealed vaults filled with ancient tech, forgotten aqueducts, collapsed metro tunnels, arboretums turned to fungal groves. The cult spreads here like a fungus, unseen but unstoppable. Each hybrid generation builds upon the last. What begins as a handful of acolytes in a sewer hatch becomes a network of bunkers, sanctums, weapons caches, birthing vaults, and shrines. They dig, they shape, they carve, they build their temple, and at its center, always, is the Patriarch. The Patriarch never speaks in words. It does not need to. Its presence is overwhelming. When a new convert is brought before it, drugged, weakened, trembling, they do not scream. They weep. They fall to their knees. They feel the brood mind press into their soul, and they belong. This is no ordinary infection. It is communion. And in the eyes of the faithful, the Patriarch is not a monster. It is a saint, a sacred, eternal father whose love reaches across the cult, whose dreams they all share. It sleeps, it watches, it waits, and when it moves, it is always with purpose. Surrounding the Patriarch are the layers of the faithful, the first-generation hybrids, barely human, hunched with too many limbs and too little language, guard the inner sanctum. Their loyalty is absolute. Their faith is imprinted in their bones. The second and third generations work as the laborers and enforcers. They are more human-seeming, able to operate above ground if needed. They guide new converts, keep the tunnels secure, train the faithful in arms and doctrine. The fourth generation are almost indistinguishable from Imperial citizens. They infiltrate hive industry, the Adeptus Arbites, even planetary government. They bring information, influence, power. All of them serve, and all of them pray. The cult's hierarchy is not chaos. It is more organized than many Imperial institutions. Roles are assigned, rations are distributed, injuries are treated with stolen Medicae tech and primitive biotech developed by the cult's biophagus. Education is vital. Children are taught to read from stolen textbooks and sacred scrolls. They learn Imperial law not to obey it, but to understand how to evade it. They study scripture, some written by the Magus, others channeled directly from the brood mind. All serve the greater message. You are not slaves. You are chosen. The Imperium has lied to you. The Star Children will set you free. They say it to each other every day, and in time, they believe it. The tunnels do not remain passive. They grow. They reach into the hive above. Hidden stairways, maintenance shafts, supply routes. The cult establishes control points, generators, filtration hubs, waste management systems. Systems no one pays attention to, but which are vital. And when the day of ascension comes, these tunnels become a weapon. Arbit's stations are infiltrated from below. Fuel lines are rerouted, explosives planted. Gangs who resist are wiped out in the night. No one knows where the attacks are coming from, because no one dares to map the Underhive. Not fully. The cult maintains sacred places, ritual chambers and shrines, often layered within these tunnel systems. Each site is a place of memory. A location where a saint martyr was born, where a genestealer first planted the seed, where the brood mind grew strong. They light incense made from promethium and chem fungus. They sing in low tones, harmonizing with the natural hum of the hive's engines. Some gather to carve holy glyphs, others fast or flay themselves in ritual purity. It is a mockery of religion, or perhaps a mirror. Because in their eyes, this is not mimicry, it is truth. But not everything beneath the hive belongs to the cult. The underhive is ancient. It remembers. There are things down there older than the Imperium. Long-abandoned Mechanicus experiments, corrupted cogitators still running after 10,000 years, servitors gone mad, xenospores, chaos remnants. Sometimes the cult stumbles across these things, and sometimes they incorporate them. A corrupted Mechanicus machine spirit becomes a blessed guardian in their eyes. A warp-tainted shrine is reinterpreted as a sacred relic. Even encounters with minor demons are sometimes mistaken as visions from the Star Children. The Magus recontextualizes everything, to keep faith strong, to keep doubt dead. The cult's power below is built on ignorance. No one above looks down. The Administratum sees productivity rise and assumes things are fine. The Adeptus Mechanicus notes fluctuations in energy use, but writes them off as system decay. Even Arbite's patrols avoid going too deep. It is only when something massive happens, when an entire block vanishes, when explosions rock the foundation, when the brood mind surges, that they realize the enemy was never invading. The enemy was already here. The Inquisition knows the importance of the underhive. Veteran Inquisitors bring geomantic survey teams, psychic resonance scanners, Auspex drones. But even they struggle. The cults know the tunnels better. They built them. They live in them. They know which sections collapse, which vents lead to which levels, which walls are rigged with explosives. An Inquisitor who steps too far alone is dead. No one escapes the underhive unless the cult allows it, and they rarely do. There are stories of entire hive cities collapsing during purges, brought down by explosives planted in the tunnels. Some suspect the cults plan for this, a last resort, a martyr's act. If we cannot ascend, the Magus says, then we will take the hive with us. Let its bones feed the void. Let the Tyranids drink the ashes. Because to them, death is not defeat, it is communion. So the tunnels remain. Even after a world is cleansed, the tunnels are still there, filled with ash, with blood, with echoing chants. The Imperium may seal them, may burn them, may flood them with toxins. But the rot always returns. The tunnels always open again. Because beneath every hive, every factory, every cathedral of light, the shadow waits, and the cult builds. In every Genestealer cult, there comes a moment where faith becomes clarity and belief becomes control. This moment has a name. It is the awakening of the Magus. To the Imperium, the Magus is a heretic psyker, a mutant, a dangerous deviant who manipulates the weak-minded into rebellion. But to the cult, the Magus is far more. A prophet, a spiritual conduit, a living bridge between the cult's mortal congregation and the inhuman will of the brood mind. The Magus is the voice of the patriarch, the mind beneath the mask, the one who speaks not only for the Star Children, but with them. And when the Magus rises, entire worlds begin to dream of freedom. The Magus is not born. It is made, forged across generations of genetic corruption and sacred infection. Not every cult produces one. Only the largest, most mature, and spiritually attuned congregations can give birth to such a creature. When one is born, the cult knows. A psychic pulse ripples through the brood mind. A new node forms in the lattice of thought. The patriarch grows still. The cult listens. And the child is blessed. The infant Magus is never touched by the filth of labor. It is reared by acolytes and guarded by the most loyal hybrids. It receives instruction not only in the doctrines of the Star Children, but in history, warfare, and the human soul. It learns to speak in 50 dialects, to recite the false promises of the ecclesiarchy, to mimic the piety of imperial dogma and how to unravel them all with a single smile. But its greatest weapon is not its tongue, it is its mind. The psychic might of the Magus is not warp-sourced in the same way as most human psykers. The hive mind is not a warp entity, but it presses into the warp, distorts it, shapes it, pushes the brood mind through the veil in ways that baffle even the most learned of the Ordo Malleus. The Magus becomes a focal point for this pressure, not a demon, but something far stranger, a relay. Its psychic powers are a blend of manipulation, suggestion, and mental domination, and it can bend weak minds with a glance. Where the Patriarch rules through presence, the Magus rules through influence. It sees every doubt in a governor's heart, every secret in a priest's sermons, every crack in the loyal facade of a guardsman, and it leans in gently, gently. Why serve a master who does not see you? Why pray to a corpse when you could speak to the divine? Why die forgotten when you could rise eternal? It never shouts, it whispers. It does not command the cult with rage or punishment. It guides, it shapes dreams. It becomes the voice inside the faithful's heads, telling them when to rise, when to wait, when to kill. Under its direction, the cult transforms from a scattered network into a machine of belief. It builds with precision, it recruits with purpose, it infiltrates strategically. And when the Magus deems it time, it does not announce war. It begins the sermon of truth. The Magus rarely appears in public. Its presence is precious, its life too valuable to risk on a misstep. When it speaks, it is behind shadowed veils or through hololithic projectors stolen from the administratum. When it is seen, it appears glorious, robed in flowing violet and crimson, adorned with living jewels cultivated from Tyranid flesh. Its forehead pulses with psychic light, its eyes glowing with unfathomable depth. To the cult, its very sight is holy. To the outsider, it is terrifying, because when it speaks, people listen, even the uninfected, even the strong. There are records, sealed and hidden, of entire planetary militias who defected after one address from a Magus, of planetary governors who rescinded orders after a single meeting, of ecclesiarchy preachers who tore up their own sermons after hearing the Magus speak. And there are darker stories, stories of fleets turning on themselves, of space marines falling into fratricide after a failed attempt to capture one alive. Because the Magus does not only speak to individuals, it speaks to the soul of the crowd. It speaks to the weakest part of mankind, the part that hopes. But the Magus is not alone. It is flanked by lesser psykers, mind worms, psychic echoes, spiritual lieutenants born of partial awakening. These act as intermediaries and protectors, spreading the Magus influence across the cult when the physical Magus cannot attend in person. Sometimes they appear as twin oracles, sometimes as warrior clerics wielding force, staffs, and minds as weapons. These mind worms relay visions, conduct interrogations, and lead psychic rituals beneath the hives. They help reinforce the psychic lattice that links the cult's brood mind together, each believer, no matter how lowly, carrying a sliver of the Magus will in their dreams. This is not merely command, it is symbiosis. The relationship between the Magus and the Patriarch is unique in the galaxy. The Patriarch is the foundation, the primal force, the creator of the cult. But the Magus is its voice. Without the Patriarch, the Magus would lack communion. Without the Magus, the Patriarch would remain silent and brooding. Together, they form a spiritual axis. The Patriarch dreams, the Magus interprets, and the cult marches forward unified. But when one dies, the other suffers. In rare cases where a Magus is assassinated before the Day of Ascension, the entire cult fractures. Confusion spreads. doctrines clash, sects emerge. Inquisitors call this the silencing, and it is often the only hope of stopping the cult before it reaches critical mass. But killing a magus is no easy task. They rarely fight directly. When threatened, they flee behind layers of hybrids, mind-controlled pawns, and psychic barriers. They can bend lesser minds to shield them, cause trained assassins to freeze, or turn a loyal guard's trigger finger against his own skull. Worse still, if a magus senses its death is imminent, it may trigger a psychic scream, a signal flare that echoes into the warp, calling to the hive mind, marking the world as ready. Even in death, it serves. There are accounts of magi who survived assassination attempts and turned entire inquisitorial teams into cult martyrs. There are stories of magi imprisoned aboard black ships who corrupted entire decks before the vessel could reach Terra. One tale, denied by official records, speaks of a magus captured by the Ordo Xenos, placed in stasis, only for a junior acolyte to release it in the night, whispering, "He spoke to me, he forgave me." None know where that magus went, but the world it was held on is silent. The magus is not the cult's general, it is its heartbeat, and as long as it beats, the cult lives. Even if the uprising is crushed, even if the PDF retakes the city, even if the hive towers burn and the tunnels collapse, if the magus survives, the cult will return. It will find new followers. It will birth a new brood mind. It will whisper once more, and the dream will begin again. In the darkness between stars, the Tyranids sleep, but the magus waits. It listens. It prepares. Because one day the sky will split and the gods will arrive. And when they do, the magus will stand at the edge of the world, robes billowing, psychic fire rising behind it, and welcome them home. Not as a servant, not as prey, but as their herald, and all who followed it will lift their arms in joy, crying not in fear, but in exultation. The Genestealer cult does not build armies in the open. They do not parade in formation, nor hold grand reviews under banners fluttering in the wind. They do not train on open parade grounds or spar in combat cages like the Astra Militarum. Number. They train in silence. They arm themselves in secret. And when they rise, they do not rise as soldiers. They rise as believers with guns. It begins not with weapons, but with tools. In the mines, it is the power pick and the seismic hammer. In the manufactorums, it is the cutting torch, the rivet gun, the augmetic arm designed to punch through steel. In the hive spires, it is the sanitation claw, the maintenance drone, the servo skull. Every worker, every hybrid, every acolyte knows the tool they hold today will be the weapon they wield tomorrow. And so the cult arms itself without drawing a single eye, day by day, piece by piece, bolt by bolt, until their sanctums are filled with an arsenal masked as utility. And when the time comes, they do not need to distribute weapons. They've been carrying them all along. Still, as the cult grows in size and ambition, it needs more. It needs laser guns, auto guns, flamers, heavy stubbers, missile launchers, demo charges, but they do not buy them. They harvest them through theft, through infiltration, through bribes and sabotage and slow corrosion of trust. A single neophyte embedded in a PDF unit can smuggle a crate of rifles down into the underhive each month. A cultist working in a manufactorum can misreport inventory numbers, allowing hundreds of grenades to disappear. A loyal Arbeits officer infected by the kiss of a pure strain might unlock an entire precinct armory without a word. Each gain is small, but in a cult that measures time in generations, small is enough. And when the time for concealment ends, the military transformation begins. The Genestealer cult becomes not just a congregation, but a war machine. Its warriors are not professional soldiers, but they do not need to be. They have been drilling since birth. They know the terrain. They know exactly where the enemy will stand, and they know how to cut them down. The foot soldiers of the cult are the neophyte hybrids. They are the fourth generation, mostly human in appearance, but stronger, faster, more enduring than baseline citizens. They can pass among the uninfected, and thus they often serve as the cult's vanguard. Neophytes carry lasguns, autoguns, and repurposed mining gear. They march under banners woven in secrecy, adorned with glyphs only the faithful can read. They are not uniformed, but they are united. Their faces may wear respirators, visors, goggles, but underneath, they all smile. Because for the first time in their lives, they are marching toward freedom. More monstrous are the acolyte hybrids, second and third generation cultists, less human in appearance, more lethal in function. They move in small packs, wielding bone saws, power picks, mining drills, and toxin sprayers. Some ride Atalan jackals, modified dirt cycles and quads once used for prospecting, now turned into fast-attack murder engines. The jackals roar through the ruins of cities and tunnels of underhives, striking with hit-and-run precision. Each rider is an artist of ambush, planting bombs, gunning down officers, vanishing into the steam. Their appearance, distorted, inhuman, often terrifying, is never a weakness. It is a sacrament. They are the arms of the Star Children, and they will not be denied. At the heart of the cult's fury are the aberrants, misshapen giants, muscular beyond belief. Often near mindless, their devotion is instinctual, primal. They do not think, they rage. Bred as shock troops and living battering rams, aberrants are equipped with massive hammers, power picks the size of grav shoots, and their own clawed limbs. They do not wear armor. They do not require it. Their skin is thick, their bones denser than steel. They can wade through a hailstorm of lasfire and still reach their target. Entire PDF regiments have broken upon their charge. Even Space Marines speak of them with caution. For when the aberrants rise, walls fall, and in their wake the cult advances. The true strategic power of the cult comes from its war engines. Despite the Imperium's assumption that they are a primitive Xenos cult, many Genestealer factions wield armored might. Through stolen or corrupted Mechanicus templates, through centuries of scavenging and infiltration, the cults manufacture or appropriate a variety of vehicles, repurposed civilian haulers turned into battle tanks. Most iconic among them is the Goliath truck, a rugged all-terrain vehicle once used for mining ore, now bristling with armor plating and mounted weapons. Some are fitted with flamers, others with missile racks or heavy stubbers. They transport neophyte squads and acolytes into the heart of the battle, and when the cult surges forward, the Goliaths lead the way. Right behind them come the Goliath rock grinders, armed with massive rotary drills and dozer blades. Originally designed to break through mountains, they now break through defensive lines. They are engines of both war and worship, covered in devotional icons painted in ritual ochre, adorned with skulls and sacred cloth. Each vehicle is as much an altar as it is a tank, and within it, the faithful pray as they charge. But the Genestealer cult's greatest military advantage is not its claws, its guns, or its vehicles. It is its coordination. Unlike most rebellions which descend into chaos, the Genestealer uprising unfolds with terrifying precision. Each flank is timed, each strike coordinated, each ambush prepared years in advance. The Magus and the Primus, Mastermind and Battlefield Commander, coordinate through the Broodmind. No Vox required, no signals intercepted. They think as one. Where the Imperium struggles with delay and miscommunication, the cult moves as a single organism. To fight them is not to face an army, it is to face a will. Even in defeat, the cult adapts. if PDF reinforcements arrive, if an Inquisitor deploys a kill team, if a strike fails. The cult changes tactics. They scatter, regroup, reappear. They do not stand and die. They melt into the tunnels, into the streets, into the faces of the workforce. A week later, a loyal commander disappears. 2 days after that, a Vox tower is destroyed. Then a transport depot explodes. The uprising begins again. Because the cult does not break, it evolves. Some of the most feared cult factions are those that have endured war and survived. The cult of the Inner Coil, the Sons of the Ember Maw, the Pale Ascendants of Vaughn the Ninth. Each one has seen the Imperium's might. Each one has been scarred, and each one has grown stronger. Some now field stolen Lehman Russ tanks, repainted in sacred symbols. Others have corrupted Astra Militarum regiments from within, turning entire battalions into Genestealer-led armies without ever raising suspicion. A handful have even learned to manipulate the mechanics of void warfare, using civilian ships as drop platforms, riding scrap shuttles into orbit, hijacking cargo fleets from within. They do not fear escalation. They seek it, because war is not the end of their faith. It is its consummation. To the Imperium, they are mutants and heretics. To themselves, they are warriors of prophecy. Their weapons are holy. Their drills are blessed. Their tanks are temples. Their bullets are sermons. And as they march, they chant, "For the four-armed Emperor, for ascension, for the day we rise into the stars." They are not an army. They are a revelation. And every shot they fire carries not hate, but joy. For in battle they see not death, only the next step in the dream, only the arms of their gods reaching down. And they will not stop firing until the stars descend. Before the hive fleets arrive, before the sky darkens and the stars weep ichor, there is a whisper in the void, a silent call that does not cross Vox beacons or warp relays. It does not scream like the signals of the Imperium. It sings, a psychic hymn so subtle, so alien, that even the most sensitive astropaths do not recognize it for what it is. It is the Star Children's signal, and once it is cast, there is no turning back. The Genestealer cult, for all its claws and drills and sermons, is never the end in itself. It is the beginning, the vanguard, a biological and psychic lighthouse, guiding the true devourers from across the abyss of space. This is what the faithful live for, the ultimate culmination of their belief. The day their gods arrive. But the signal must be earned. It is not sent casually, not triggered like a flare. It is a ritual, both psychic and genetic. A psychic broadcast created not through technology, but through faith and flesh. The Magus begins the preparation long before the final uprising. At certain intervals, the broodmind is focused through mass ritual, chanting, sacrifice, fasting. The cult's most powerful psychic nodes, mind worms, seers, even latent psychers, are gathered to amplify the hive's spiritual frequency. In hidden sanctums below the hive cities, sometimes kilometers beneath the crust, the rituals are performed. The faithful gather in great numbers, kneeling before the throne of the flesh, an organic node grown from the patriarch's own tissue, infused with Tyranid genetic code and laced with neuroconductive alloys stolen from Mechanicus vaults. It pulses like a heart. It dreams. And when the ritual reaches its crescendo, the broodmind channels its call, a psychic scream but not in rage, a welcome, a beacon of love and longing. This is the moment of revelation, the moment when a cult transitions from insurgency to sacrifice. Every cell, every hybrid, every magus knows what they've done. They have not just called the hive fleets, they have invited annihilation. Because the hive mind does not reward, it devours, and still they rejoice, they weep with joy, they dance in blood. Because in their minds, death is not defeat, it is union. To be consumed by the hive mind is to ascend into its infinite being, to shed the weakness of individuality, to become part of something eternal, something perfect. And so the signal is not sent with fear, but with worship. The exact mechanics of the Star Children's signal are still poorly understood, even by the Inquisition. Some suspect the psychic pulse warps the Imperium itself, distorting the skein of the warp to create gravitational anomalies that draw Tyranid synapse beasts across the stars. Others argue the signal is biological in origin, broadcast through pheromone clouds and quantum mycelium networks seeded into the planet's crust by cult biophagus. Still, others believe the Tyranids always know, always listen, and the signal is simply a confirmation that the meal is ready, that the infection has run its course, that the biomass is ripe. Whatever the truth, the results are always the same. Weeks, sometimes mere days, after the signal is sent, the stars begin to vanish. At first, astronomers report erratic gravitational readings. Tidal patterns shift. The void becomes heavier. Then the first spores arrive. Tiny molecular intrusions. Floating dust that is not dust. Spores that melt steel and breed in lungs. Skyfire follows. Bioships descend, not like raiders, but like teeth. Swarms of Tyranid organisms rain from orbit. Capillary towers erupt from the ground, merging with cult-built infrastructure. The process of consumption begins immediately. The cult rejoices. They climb the towers. They embrace the Tyranids. Many throw down their weapons and offer themselves to the synapse beasts. And the Tyranids, they consume them without hesitation. There is no reward, no embrace, only assimilation. Some magi survive long enough to see the truth, to witness the hive mind's total indifference, to realize they were never servants, only beacons. Some scream, some fight, some collapse in ecstasy, but most simply accept it, because to them even being discarded is sacred. The arrival of the Hive fleet marks the final victory of the signal, and it is always brutal. No exceptions, no survivors. The planet's biosphere is stripped. Plants, animals, water, air. Even the minerals of the crust are consumed. Every human who resisted, every loyalist soldier who held the line, every priest who shouted the Emperor's name until his lungs burned. They are all digested alike. The cult may be the cause, but the Tyranids are the end, and they leave nothing behind. Not even memory. The Imperium has witnessed this cycle too many times. On Valador, the cult's call brought not one hive fleet, but two. Leviathan and Kraken collided above the skies, drawn by competing signals. The resulting psychic storm nearly tore the planet's soul apart. On Vigilus, the Pauper Princes broadcast their signal even as the planet burned under endless siege. The Hive fleets responded not with fire, but with strategy. Reinforcements slipped through the war zone like serpents, drawn to the psychic nectar of the cult. Even in the Hadar sector, where Inquisitor Calix executed Exterminatus before the Hive fleet arrived, it didn't matter. The cult had sent its call years prior. Tyranids arrived and fed on ash. Because to them, the cult's signal is not just an invitation, it is a promise. What makes the signal so dangerous is not its strength, it is its certainty. The hive mind always answers. No matter how far, no matter the resistance, the cult does not doubt, because it has seen the truth in its dreams. Every hybrid, every convert, shares the psychic echo, the promise of the stars, the taste of the void, and they die with smiles on their lips, not in agony, but in completion, because they were never fighting to live. They were preparing the altar. In rare cases, the signal is intercepted. The Imperium has deployed Psychana specialists and black ship contingents to trace and sever the psychic frequencies before they reach the hive mind. Some magi have been silenced in time, some planets quarantined fast enough to prevent signal transmission. But these are miracles, not strategies, because most signals are sent not through technology, but through faith. They exist inside the cult, carried not in data, but in souls. To stop the signal, you must kill the dream, and dreams are hard to kill, especially when they have claws. As the hive fleet descends, the planet dies, but the signal echoes onward. It is encoded in the biomass itself. It becomes part of the Tyranids' genetic memory, part of the hive mind's map, a burning psychic brand across the stars. Other hive fleets feel it, other cults hear it, and they begin their own preparations. Another world begins to rot. Another magus begins to whisper. Another patriarch begins to dream, and the signal is prepared again. The star children do not forget. They are not merciful, but they are inevitable, and their signal never fades. It is whispered in the silence between systems. It is etched into the nightmares of psychers. It is sung in the marrow of dead men's bones, and as long as there is one faithful soul left to whisper, they are coming. They will. Among the thousands of Genestealer cults scattered like parasites across the stars, few rise to infamy. Fewer still are spoken of in hushed tones, even among the Ordo Xenos. But one name carved in the ash and bones of war zones across the Imperium echoes louder and more fearsomely than most: the Pauper Princes. They are not the first, they are not the largest, but they are zealots. And in their zeal, they have achieved what few cults ever have: a reputation, not just for resistance, but for righteous apocalyptic war. To understand the Pauper Princes is to understand what happens when belief becomes fire. Most cults hide, they plan, they manipulate from the shadows and rise only when the time is right. But the Pauper Princes do not fear exposure, they seek it. For them, martyrdom is not a risk, it is the very goal. They do not whisper, they do not skulk, they preach. And where their gospel spreads, the ground cracks, the sky burns, and loyalists tremble. They are not tied to one world. Their origin is fragmented, hidden among conflicting data fragments and suppressed imperial records. Some inquisitors trace them to a fringe pilgrim planet in the Ultima Segmentum, where a missionary convoy disappeared nearly 2 centuries ago, replaced by strange sermons and mass disappearances. Others believe they began aboard a space hulk, a derelict vessel infested with genestealers that crashed into an ecclesiastical convoy, survivors infected with both tyranid gene seed and religious fervor, spread like a plague to shrine worlds and temple ships. Whatever the truth, by the time the Pauper Princes revealed themselves, they were everywhere. Pilgrimage routes, shrine worlds, ecclesiarchy convoys, agri priests, missionary orders, all quietly taken, all remade. What separates the Pauper Princes from other cults is their fusion of Tyranid ideology and imperial religion. Most Genestealer cults abandon the Emperor outright, replacing him with their 4-armed patriarch. But the Pauper Princes recontextualize. To them, the Emperor is not a false god. He is a harbinger, a flawed but glorious first attempt by the galaxy to reach the divine. And now, with the coming of the Star Children, his promise will be fulfilled, not through faith in his death, but through union with his successors. The Patriarch is not the Emperor's rival. He is his perfection. Their sermons are masterpieces of corruption. They quote imperial scripture, bending it until it fits the claws of the cult. He shall rise upon 4 arms, and from his touch shall flow unity and strength. The light of the Imperium has dimmed, but the great devourer brings a truer flame. To be devoured is to be saved. To join the hive is to be free. These words do not ring hollow. They are spoken from pulpits carved from industrial wreckage, sung from vox towers hacked into holy broadcast frequencies, painted across cathedral walls with the blood of confessors. And worst of all, they believe every word. When the pauper princes rise, they rise en masse. There is no subtlety, no half measures. Entire pilgrim convoys vanish from the stars, only to reappear months later, fully transformed. Their flagships adorned in grotesque religious iconography, imperial aquilis reshaped into clawed wings, statues of saints with multi-limbed bodies, incense censers spewing psychoactive spores instead of sacred smoke. Inside, the faithful gather in the thousands, chanting in harmony, weeping tears of joy, as the magus preaches from a pulpit fused with tyranid flesh. These fleets do not seek escape, they seek war, and wherever they descend, they bring with them the full might of their insanity. Nowhere was this more evident than on Vigilus, a world already teetering under siege from orcs, chaos, and civil disorder. Vigilus became the grand stage for the pauper prince's revelation. They did not infiltrate as individuals. They arrived as pilgrims, tens of thousands dressed in rags, chanting prayers, walking across the ash wastes in columns stretching for miles. Many believed them refugees. Others mistook them for a penitent crusade. But beneath their robes were weapons. Beneath their smiles were claws, and beneath their feet, cultic glyphs were being carved into the very rock. By the time the defenders realized the truth, it was too late. The pauper princes did not simply attack. They converted. They tore into PDF lines, not just with blades, but with words. Speakers mounted on mobile shrines broadcast sermons mid-battle. Captured soldiers were brought before the magus, not for interrogation, but confession. And many, broken by fear, hunger, and loss, gave in. They knelt. They wept. And they joined. Guardsmen turned on comrades. Habspire residents opened gates. Entire bastions fell not to siege, but to acceptance. The cult's psychic network swelled. The broodmind flared. And then, the sky broke. The signal had already been sent. Hive Fleet Kronos arrived, and Vigilus began to die. Even after their defeat, the pauper princes endured. Some were thought dead, vaporized in orbital bombardments, but they always return. Fragments of their cult continue to emerge across Segmentum, Ultima, and Pacificus, each time bearing the same icons, the same robes, the same songs. They arrive as refugees, they leave as conquerors, and each time the magus begins the same speech. We were poor, but now we are full. We were forgotten, but now we are chosen. Come, eat, drink, and be joined to the one who hungers. And people listen, because in the ashes of imperial neglect, even madness can sound like hope. The Inquisition has placed the pauper princes at the top of many Ordo Xenos threat lists. Exterminatus orders have been signed, purge fleets have been dispatched, kill teams sent into shrine fleets, crypt worlds, and asteroid sanctuaries. And still, the cult grows. Because belief cannot be bombed, and the pauper princes are not just a cult. They are a movement. They have corrupted ministorum orders, hijacked pilgrim star skiffs, infiltrated entire shrine worlds under the guise of penitent orders. They wear the robes of priests, carry the books of martyrs, and within them grow claws and fangs, and a heart that does not beat for terror, but for the cosmic choir of the hive mind. Among the faithful, there is a whispered phrase, "We are the last church." Not a building, not a cult, a church. Because to the pauper princes, this is no longer rebellion. It is reformation. The old Imperium is dying, its emperor is a corpse, its people are broken, its promises lies. But the Star Children offer truth, unity, purpose, and all you have to do is kneel. And the magus, always the magus, smiles. His eyes glow with a light no human mind can fully comprehend. His voice trembles with joy and madness, and he speaks, "The meal is prepared. The gods are coming. We, the pauper princes, shall be the first to be devoured, and in our devouring we shall become eternal." And the crowd erupts, not in fear, but in rapture. In the dark corners of the galaxy, the ecclesiarchy fears one thing above all: a heresy that does not burn, a heresy that believes, and the pauper princes do not just believe, they know. They walk toward the Tyranid maw with arms open wide, and they do not scream, they sing. To the Inquisition, there are a few case studies so horrifying, so complete in their devastation, that they are used as mandatory reading for new Ordo Xenos acolytes, not because they hold hope, but because they hold warning. At the top of that list, filed beneath 1,000 layers of redacted glyphs and sealed vault codes, is the recorded collapse of a single mining world, Gosar Quintus. It is not remembered by the Imperium for its industry, nor for any noble sacrifice. It is remembered because it was first. The first world officially confirmed to have fallen to a fully mature Genestealer cult. Gosar Quintus was, on the surface, unremarkable. A rocky, mineral-rich world spinning in the cold dark of the eastern fringe, its atmosphere barely breathable, its climate arid and cruel. What made the planet valuable was not its culture, there was none to speak of, but its deep mineral veins. For generations, its mining colonies worked day and night, scraping the planet's crust in service of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The population lived in sprawling subterranean networks called mine habs, shielded from storms and tectonic rumbles by ancient tech barriers. It was a perfect place to be forgotten. And so, when a Pura strain Genestealer arrived, possibly through a deep ore transport from a neighboring system, no one noticed, no alarms, no flashing lights, no signs of invasion. It simply disappeared into the dark. And then, the whispering began. At first, there were only rumors. Miners returning to the surface changed, strange in their speech, too calm. Birth records began to show anomalies. Children born with disfigurements, but whom the parents refused to relinquish for Medicaid review. Reports were buried. Tech adepts silenced. The local administratum dismissed it all as radiation damage or inbreeding. But underneath, something ancient and patient was growing. The cult of the Star Ascendant was born. It began, as they all do, in worship. Miners praying not to the Emperor, but to the deep voice, a god they claimed whispered from the tunnels, promising salvation and a better life beyond the stars. The cult flourished, hidden behind the facade of labor and exhaustion. Each new generation brought more hybrids. Each day, the patriarch grew stronger. The Magus, a pale-robed figure known only as Vorgan Trey, began broadcasting sermons over repurposed mining vox links. His voice was soft, soothing, filled with promises. He spoke of ascension, of the coming of the true sky, of deliverance not through blood, but through transformation. Those who doubted vanished. Those who believed multiplied. The administratum finally took notice when production quotas began to plummet. Entire sectors stopped responding. Shipment vessels went missing. A delegation was sent, a low-level overseer and a mechanicus engineer. Neither were heard from again. The local PDF, undermanned and unmotivated, dispatched scouts. Only one returned. He raved of limbed shadows in the dust, of shrines made from flesh, of whole families kneeling before a giant white-eyed monster that blessed them with its claws. He died in his sleep. Throat slit, no suspects, no arrests. By the time the Imperium realized the scale of the corruption, it was already over. An inquisitorial strike force was dispatched, led by Inquisitor Malthan Krail, an Ordo Xenos Puritan with decades of experience. He arrived in system with a small fleet, bringing with him Sisters of Battle, Skitarii cohorts, and Deathwatch kill teams. They expected a planetary rebellion, a Xenos infestation, a skirmish. What they found was a world already consumed. Krail's forces deployed onto the outer mine habs first. What they found was not resistance. They found silence. Empty tunnels, abandoned processing stations, mummified corpses posed in prayer, dressed in tattered robes marked with clawed icons. When they reached the main hive network, the resistance began. But it wasn't disorganized. It wasn't chaotic. It was orchestrated. Ambushes struck with precise timing, vox links cut, reinforcements lost in twisting corridors, and always, always the chant. Low, rhythmic, rising from every wall. He comes. He brings light. He brings the sky. Krail pushed deeper, deploying heavier firepower. Aberrants surged from cavern maws. Neophytes poured out of air ducts like insects. Cult limousines, industrial rigs converted into war chariots, rammed through his formations. The deeper they went, the worse it became. The walls pulsed, the air sang. And at the center of it all, the Patriarch waited. The final battle took place in the Chamber of Union, a colossal cathedral-sized cavern at the core of Gosar Quintus. Thousands of cultists stood in worship, surrounding the great beast. The Death Watch charged, flamers roared, bolters tore flesh. But the cult did not scatter. They did not scream. They embraced death. And as they fell, more surged forth. Children, elders, workers, all bearing weapons, all chanting. Krail reached the altar. He faced the Magus. They spoke, though no record survives of what was said. Then Krail triggered the cyclonic implosion device affixed to his chest plate. The chamber collapsed. The tunnels caved in. The cult was buried. Or so they thought. Decades later, Mechanicus teams returned to salvage lost archaeotech. They found signs of life, skeletal remains, partially functioning shrines, carvings in stone, untouched by time. A final unpowered Vox recording played on loop. We shall rise again. We are the womb. We are the claw. We are the first. We are the last. The stars shall drink of us. And then, silence. Gosar Quintus was declared perdita extremis. All travel to the system was banned, all records sealed. And yet, other cults have taken up its name. Gosari Doctrine. Quintus Method. References that appear in intercepted sermons across dozens of worlds. A philosophy of total surrender, of death as revelation, of the cult not as uprising, but as a holy extinction. The Genestealer Cults point to Gosar Quintus as their Jerusalem, a place where the faith was tested and proved eternal, where the Imperium struck with all its fury and still failed to stop the dream, where the cult died and became legend. For every world infected, the shadow of Gosar looms, a warning, a prophecy, a promise, that no matter how deep the mines, no matter how hard the steel, no matter how pure the flame, the Genestealer cult cannot be buried. It grows beneath the ash, waiting, watching, and whispering, "We are the Starborn. We are the Quintus. We come to bring the sky." There are uprisings the Imperium expects, those of greed, vengeance, or despair. Rebellions sparked by tyrannical governors, economic collapse, or heretical fervor. These are brutal but predictable. They burn bright, leave bodies in the streets, and are extinguished in days or weeks. But what haunts the Inquisition far more are not the explosions of rebellion. It's the quiet ones, the ones that unwind without a sound, the ones that spiral inward, slowly and methodically, with no alarms, no uprising, until everything is already lost. These are known by a dozen names in Ordo Xenos vaults, but to those who know their danger, they are simply called the Silent Spiral. There is no official definition, no standard protocol, because the Silent Spiral is not an act, it is a process, a planetary unraveling, a cultural decay, the slow and total submission of a world, not through force, not through preaching, but through identity corrosion. In every recorded case, the signs were subtle, too subtle, a change in planetary art motifs, figures with too many limbs adorning frescoes, a new festival emerging from nowhere, honoring the first ancestor or the Star Father, children's rhymes containing phrases like "the sleeper dreams below the rock," local faiths sprouting doctrines of convergence, of union, of the greater form. These weren't false religions. They were masks, carefully cultivated by embedded cultists to replace local traditions without raising alarm. And always it began with the language. One of the first worlds to be documented as having suffered the Silent Spiral was Arctheon's Rest, an ice-covered mining moon under the control of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Mechanicus, proud of its isolation and data sanctity, rarely allowed outside contact. It had no astropathic choir, no ecclesiarchy presence, and no social flux. Its population was minimal, its industry critical, refining plasma-conductive alloys for plasma coils across nearby forge worlds. For nearly 40 years, the ties flowed without issue. Then they simply stopped. No distress signals, no pleas, no warning, only silence. A single explorator ship was dispatched, assuming a mechanical failure. What they found upon descent was not the aftermath of war, but eerie order. Lights still functioned, machines still ran. The forges were hot, the atmospheric stabilizers cycling. But the people were gone. Not missing, not massacred. Gone. Homes were still lived in, meals left uneaten. Vox units still chimed the planetary time, and in every corridor across every wall were scrawled spirals, endless spirals looping in tight, perfect patterns, drawn in soot, oil, and, closer inspection revealed, blood. And everywhere in repeated code glyphs, "He hears us. He comes." The spiral is not just a symbol, it is a mechanism. The Genestealer Cult, when it can afford to operate over generations, uses the spiral as an infiltration doctrine. Each rotation of the spiral represents a layer of influence. The outer spiral targets civic workers, sanitation crews, transport officials, people who can move unseen, who no one notices. The middle spiral co-ops infrastructure, power nodes, Vox stations, food supply chains, orbits databanks. And the inner spiral, the core, converts leadership, not through brute force, but through seduction, indoctrination, or infiltration. By the time the final loop of the spiral is drawn, when the cult reaches the heart of power, there's nothing left to save. The planet still looks loyal, but its soul is already screaming. Another terrifying example emerged in the Hadar Drift, a loosely governed cluster of agri-worlds supplying the Sithrak's marches. For years, the harvest reports were not just positive, they were too positive. Above quota. Perfect climate control. No pestilence, no blight. Administratum officials praised them for efficiency. Awards were sent, commendations granted. What no one realized was that these reports were entirely fabricated. Because the worlds had no living government, the spiral had eaten it from within. The cult had infiltrated the administratum scribes and redirected all food exports to secret fleets. The actual population lived in sprawling underhive communes, fully converted, worshipping beneath towers made of farming equipment and bone. They had rewritten the entire bureaucratic identity of their world, and no one noticed. Not until a rogue trader, attempting a last-minute deal, returned screaming to the Ordo Xenos with reports of humans walking in circles for days, humming the same 3 notes, eating nothing. But the silent spiral isn't only about planetary infiltration. It's about psychic erosion. You see, Genestealer cults don't only wage war through steel and muscle. The broodmind is a weapon in itself, slow, invasive, insidious. It leaks into dreams. It whispers during sleep. On planets where the silent spiral is mature, it becomes a mimetic plague. People begin to see patterns where none exist. They hear music in static. They crave darkness, and when they speak, they begin to repeat phrases they do not remember learning. On Crissa Tertius, it was the children who fell first. Teachers reported entire classrooms, speaking in unison, repeating the phrase, "From below they rise," with arms that reached to embrace the stars. When questioned, none of them remembered saying it. Soon after, the parents began to act strangely. And then, in 1 week, every single member of the Planetary Enforcer Corps turned in their weapons, marched into the Capitol Hab Chapel, and immolated themselves. Not in protest, not in fear, but in worship. The Inquisition arrived too late. By the time the black ships descended, the planet had already sent out its signal. Not a broad transmission. A psychic spiral encoded into the minds of infected astropaths and psychers. A call of silence and hunger. Hive Fleet Leviathan answered. What makes the silent spiral so horrifying is that it can never be truly measured. There are no battles to track, no bodies to count, no fronts to map. You can't see it until the planet is already gone. Even in death, the spiral lingers. On Nox Umbriel, a moon glassed by exterminatus, post-bombardment drone scans revealed a perfect spiral etched into the charred surface of the moon, kilometers wide, carved by hundreds of clawed hands, dragging metal across the rock in their final moments. A spiral no one would ever see, except the hive mind. To combat the spiral, the Inquisition has begun developing spatial narrative disruption teams, small kill cells trained not to fight, but to listen, to detect linguistic anomalies, to trace behavioral patterns, to recognize the hum of decay before it grows too loud. But these efforts are desperate. The cults have learned to mask themselves too well. Some have even mocked the Inquisition directly. On a recaptured Vox recording from a dead world's last broadcast, a child's voice speaks. You are not too late. You are exactly where we need you. The center of the spiral is always the last to break. There are some who say the spiral is not just strategy, that it is a symbol of the hive mind itself. An endless turning, a pattern of consumption, growth, collapse, rebirth. That every cult is not just following orders, but instinctively recreating the structure of their god. And when the last planet falls, when the last cult dies screaming praise into the void, the spiral will collapse in on itself and become a maw. Until then, the Imperium searches, listens, waits, and prays that the next spiral can be broken before it completes its final turn. But already, beneath cities and moons and worlds untouched by war, the lines are being drawn, the chants are beginning, and the spiral, silent as ever, begins to turn once more. There is no single definition of triumph for a Genestealer cult. No thrones to claim, no banners to raise over broken capitals. Victory, for them, is not domination. It is ascension. And it does not come with parades. It comes with the howl of planetary sirens, the taste of ash in the lungs, and the sound of millions welcoming their gods in rapture and ruin. Across thousands of worlds, from the acid moons of the eastern fringe to the underhives of forge-furnaced planets, this day has a name whispered through generations of hybrids, the Day of Ascension. It is not a date, it is a destiny. By the time the day arrives, the cult is fully ripened. The patriarch, swollen with psychic resonance, no longer hides in the black. The magus walks openly, face aglow with transcendent power, leading processions of believers through streets already choked with debris and fire. All across the planet, coordinated cells emerge, some from tunnels carved beneath the administratum, others bursting from manufactorum ruins. Resistance collapses not under firepower, but under betrayal. Entire PDF units, their commanders long infected, turn their guns on one another. Cities are overrun within hours. Spire lords fall from their towers, dragged into the dirt and anointed in ichor. And through it all, the cult does not cheer in chaos. They celebrate in harmony. There are banners, not of the Aquila, but the blessed claw, unfurled across the skyline in mutant silk. There are chants, not of vengeance, but of praise, echoing through voxcasters, loudspeakers, and the living mouths of choir thralls. There are processions, lines of four-armed hybrids robed in holy vestments, walking hand in claw with unmutated brothers and sisters, singing of the return to the stars. Above them, cult limousines drift like sacred reliquaries, bearing relics grown from bone and tyranid biomass, living symbols of the union between flesh and the void. It is not a rebellion. It is a revelation. The Day of Ascension is a paradox. It is the moment the cult has labored for across generations, the moment they finally own the world, and yet it is also the beginning of their end. Because the signal has already gone out, the stars have already bent toward their call, and somewhere in the cold gullets of the void, the hive fleet has already changed course. They know their children have prepared the feast, and they are coming to feed. The cult knows this. They do not resist it. They worship it. For the faithful, the Day of Ascension is not just the peak of their rebellion. It is their final offering. Every death in the uprising, every martyr that falls to Lasfire or Blade, is a seed planted in sacred ground. Every hybrid that bleeds in battle does so not in defeat, but in preparation. Because their gods do not want thrones, they want biomass. And on the Day of Ascension, the cult gives all. There are examples, dozens, where the cult survived past ascension, blending into the new cycle of consumption. Some magi have hidden within the hive fleet, stowing aboard digestion cysts or merging with spore forms. Some cults are reborn aboard bioships, gestating within nodules until a new planet is reached, a new infection begins. But most do not expect to live. Their joy is in the sacrifice. Their salvation is in being consumed. The final hours are often the most beautiful. On Iocanthos, a shrine world, the cult conducted its last mass inside the Cathedral of the 100 Saints as the hive fleet's shadow eclipsed the sky. The stained glass windows shattered under the pressure of tyranid spores, but inside thousands knelt in perfect silence, illuminated by bioluminescent candles waiting to be taken. On Golgotha 9, a Mechanicus scrapyard moon, the cult reprogrammed the planet's broadcasting towers to project a planetary prayer, a continuous, unbroken chant in Binharic and Low Gothic, declaring, "We are ready, we are open, we are one." It played until the towers melted under acid rain, and on Varen's grief, the last message received by the Inquisition was a child's voice on a loop saying, "He is here, he loves us all." Then static, then silence. Imperial doctrine teaches that the Day of Ascension is a heresy made manifest, a tragedy, a catastrophe, a failure of vigilance. But to the cult, it is everything. It is their heaven, their rapture, their reunion with the star children. And when the sky breaks open and the hive descends, when capillary towers erupt from the earth and tyranid forms thunder down like alien angels, they do not run. They rush forward, arms raised. They kneel at the base of biopylons, singing hymns in broken tongues, whispering the name of the patriarch as they are swallowed by chitinous maws. They do not cry, they smile, because this is the promise fulfilled. To the Imperium, the day of ascension is a final, irreversible loss. By the time the Navy arrives, if it ever does, there is nothing left to save. The biomass has been stripped, the sky is dead, the shrines lie in ash, and the only proof a cult ever existed is the scorched remnants of their sigils, clawed icons etched in blood on walls long since eaten by acid rain. But to the cult, it was a holy day, their only day, the one they waited lifetimes for. The nightmare of the Genestealer cult is not just their violence or infiltration. It is their faith. It is their ability to believe in extinction as deliverance. And as long as that belief survives deep in the hives, in the mines, in the dreams of forgotten planets, the day of ascension will come again. Somewhere, sometime, another magus will rise, another signal will hum, another spiral will begin to turn, and another world will prepare to kneel beneath a sky that no longer shines, but hungers. Thus ends the chronicle of the Genestealer cults. The Imperium may purge and burn, may silence 1,000 voices, but the cults do not fear death, because they do not fight to survive. They fight to ascend, and in the end, whether in claw or flame or shadow, their gods always answer.